Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the regular meeting of Nanaimo City Council for June 11th, 2018. My name is Ian Thorpe. I'm the acting mayor this evening, and it's my pleasure to chair the meeting. I'd like to start by respectfully recognizing that we're holding this meeting on the traditional territory of this Nanaimo First Nation. Our clerk this evening is Ms. Sheila Gurry, and having called the meeting to order, Ms. Gurry, do we have late items to add to the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have a number of late items this evening. For agenda item 3A, introduction of late items, we're going to add a 10-minute recess for 9 p.m. Agenda item 6D, presentation from Jan Hastings, Nanaimo Recycling Exchange. We are adding the following documents. Number 1, the NRE projected income statement, and number 2, NRE business plan. For agenda item 10A, Georgia Greenway Phase 1 update, we're adding a delegation from Greg Sorensen. For agenda item 10B, hospital area parking strategy report, we're adding a delegation from Jim Goldsack. Agenda item 11A, 924 Old Victoria Road, unsightly property. We're adding correspondence from Gordon Phillips, president of Phillips Developments Ltd, dated June 7th, 2018. And I believe there is a number of councillors with a number of late delegation requests.
All right. Thank you. Council, late items. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to add Michael Rinaldi to 6C, which is the Nanaimo's Homeless Coalition 5-year plan to address that, 5 minutes. I would like to also add Amber McGrath also to 6C, which would be 5 minutes, and also Mr. Noah Ross to 6C for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So a motion to add those 3 delegations to 6C, moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Kipp. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'm sorry, Councillor Armstrong, the first name was?
The first one was Michael Rinaldi. Darryl. Oh, Darryl, sorry.
Thank you. Other late items. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the NRE subject, Mr. Tim McGrath, please. I'd like to speak on that subject, and also on, I believe it's 10A, the Georgia Greenway Phase 1 update as well, for those 2 subjects, please. Thank you.
Mr. Tim McGrath for the Georgia Greenway and the NRE.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded Councillor Hong. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Anything else from Council? Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I would like to add the following people to 6D, the NRE, and that is Craig Cookman, Arnold Erickson, Clint Thompson, Mark Graff, Joe Mazies, Stacy Arbett, and Chris Sharp.
Second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 names added to item 6D. Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ms. Gurry, you have that noted?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And now just a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended.
So moved. Councillor Kipp moving the agenda as amended. Seconded Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So that brings us to item 5, motion for adoption of minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes, and I can take them all together. They are for May 7, May 10, May 25, and May 25 at 9 a.m. and May 25 at 1 p.m. Moved Councillor Yoakum, seconded Councillor Brennan. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 6, presentations. City of Nanaimo's Youth Poet Laureate High School Poetry Competition winners. Kaylee DeFair, our Youth Poet Laureate, is going to be involved, and I'll call her forward. And the winners? And the podium mic is on, Ms. DeFer, whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having us here tonight. My name is Kaylee DeFer. As you said, I'm Nanaimo's inaugural Youth Poet Laureate. And so I'm in my second term as Youth Poet Laureate and decided to run a high school poetry competition for the city of Nanaimo. So we received a lot of great support from the teachers and librarians at the high schools in our district. And we received many submissions for the high school poetry contest. The poets that stand behind me are the top 3 winners here. So...
Yes. And now we get to hear some poetry?
Yes, you will. So the theme for the poetry contest was Out of Darkness. And I'll ask our third place winner, Rachel Ward, to come up and read her poem. She's a student at Nanaimo Christian School.
Rachel, welcome.
Ocean of Jubilation. Push me down to the sinking underground. The venom of your tongue immerses me. Below water's edge where no voice is found. Is this what it costs for me to be free? Being all alone, where shall I now roam? I've reached the bottom, the light is waning. No more turning back, this is my new home. A whole new world is in the making. Then crown me the queen of the shameless surf. My blessed reign will endure forevermore. I, the sole nominee here where there is no turf. My one command is that there be no war. So will I rise back up to the surface? No, I will remain to serve my purpose. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. That was beautiful. Our second place winner was Isabella Cooper from Wellington Secondary School, and I'll have Isabella come up and read her poem.
Open curtains, she is my moon. Curtains open, and escape awaits me. But as she hushes, bringing comfort to my pillow, she ruffles my shepherd's bristled fur. She chills me with her brisk sighs. She hollows me of pain and grants me little. Yet I can only remain awake, pondering your hidden riddle. And only by the sea, where the waves provide freedom, can I distance myself from your image, your words, your presence, and allow myself a chance at greed, for I am rarely a selfish person. But for just this once, I will only think of me, myself, and I, and how she, like the moonlight, shimmers this sailish sea so invitingly, and how easily I could just sail away.
Thank you, Isabella.
Our final reader here will be Jesse Britton. He was our first place winner, and he's also from Nanaimo Christian School.
Untitled. Many a day and many a night I waited for you in evening's light, for you, the person walking past, who knew that you would fall so fast. But will you fall or will you rise to claim your most amazing prize? Either way, I truly pray that I do not stay here day by day. Must I be trapped in my ghastly tomb, waiting always for my second doom? This may sound strange to you, my friend, that you will have a second end. But do not fret, please don't despair. Death has a rather charming air. You will have friends, I guarantee. You'll lie with all of them and me. Enough about them. Let us talk about you. It's time for you to pay your due. For as we speak, death comes this way, and just like us, you now must pay. For all you've done to hurt the weak and make the others' lives so bleak, now here is death, and there's his kiss. Now you're with us, eternal bliss. Profanity? My word, so rude. What an alarming attitude. It's not my fault you're here, it's yours, behind these truly cold stone doors. Get used to it. You're trapped with me. Welcome, my friend, to eternity.
Nicholas, thank you very much.
So that was it. Thank you guys so much again for listening. I'll give the poets their awards.
I think just before you do that, Kaylee, Council might have a question or a comment. Councillor Hong?
Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, everybody, and all the participants in this contest. But the question I have for you, I guess, is are we going to see these posted somewhere so the rest of the city can appreciate it if they want to read it? And, I'm thinking that we have the photography in the SARC, photo in the SARC, so I think poem in the SARC might be fitting. So I don't know if that's addressed to staff, or maybe you can ask staff that we put these up.
That is a very good idea.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you think so. Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you, Councillor Hong. A very good question. And I see Mr. Barfoot from our Culture and Heritage Department here, and I'm sure he'll take that under advisement. And a very good suggestion. And if I may, just before we do the presentation, I would like to comment. As many people know, I'm a former educator, and it always thrills me to have young people come to our council meetings and express themselves. And all three of you did an excellent job, and thank you very much for coming, and I admire your talent. Well done. Where would you like us, Chris? I think it should go right in front. That's okay. Sure.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks again to our poetry winners. And I'm sure the rest of the meeting will be just as positive as that portion of it was. Let's hope so. So we move on now to point-in-time homeless census. Certainly an important topic, and it's going to be introduced by Mr. John Horn, City of Nanaimo social planner. So if you're ready, Mr. Horn.
Thanks for that. And I just wanted to introduce this item. In 2018, as a way of setting the stage for this, the federal government requested communities across Canada to conduct a homeless count in their own communities. Nanaimo agreed to do one of those homeless counts, what they call a point-in-time homeless count. And United Way is the community entity for the local homeless coalition. She's going to be presenting the dialogue on that, or the results of that homeless census. She's accompanied by Violet Hayes of the Island Crisis Care Society and John McCormick of the John Howard Society. So they're here to talk a little bit about the count and the analysis of the outcomes from that count. So without further ado.
Thank you. Welcome, Signe.
Hey, thanks very much. We're pleased to be here. I'm not that young, and I wish I was reading some more uplifting poetry, but this is an important topic, and I'm pleased to be invited here to speak about it. Thank you, John. So, I'm not sure if everybody realizes, but we did conduct a homeless point-in-time count in April. And a point-in-time count is one day where we count everybody who's in the shelters, living rough on the streets, and otherwise not housed. And the federal dollars that we receive cover the costs of the count. But I'm very grateful to the John Howard team and to all the service providers that were participating on the count. We had over 50 volunteers from the community that also participated on the count, and Dave LeBerge here from the RCMP, his team was out there doing the count. So this is our, I believe, 7th community count, and our last one was in 2016. So I'm here to really highlight the difference between what happened, the numbers of folks we counted in 2016 and what we found in 2018. And before we get into the numbers, I know you've seen the report and it's been available to the public. I think it's important to remind everybody that each and every one of the folks that was interviewed and surveyed through the count is a member of our community. Their stories are powerful, and they're all deserving of a home. And so while we're talking about numbers and we're talking about the folks, we talk about the homeless, each and every one of them are they're members of our community, and our team and the folks on the Homeless Coalition are working really hard to help them find housing. So also just as context, the Nanaimo Homelessness Coalition represents over 20 agencies and funders that meet monthly to plan and develop strategies and implement strategies to help people exit homelessness and into housing. And we've been very fortunate to have that coherent group meeting for a number of years. And many of the strategies we've developed and implemented with funding from the city, the province, and the feds have worked. So I'll let John McCormick come up and run us through what we found in the point time count.
Thanks.
Do you want me to do the slides?
No, I got it. Thanks very much. Okay. Thank you so much, and I too want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo people, and I think it's important to acknowledge that because a large number of the people who are homeless are from Nanaimo and other communities up and down Vancouver Island. I think also, well, we can read the numbers and deconstruct them based on 55% are age 25 to 44, these kinds of important numbers. It really is important to just scratch the surface of this report and recognize that it is individual people telling their story about what it is to be on the streets and to be episodically and chronically homeless. And that really is when we read through the report, I hope that we can hear the voices of those people because, as Signe said, they are citizens of this community, they are community members, and it really matters that we find answers to this emerging problem. So just very quickly, some of the numbers that really jump out at us from this report. We did see a significant rise, first off, in the number of people who we counted this time around. It pretty much doubled from the last time around, and that, as we know from point-in-time counts, don't capture all of the people who are living rough or living on the street. We know that we undercount by large percentages. So we counted 300 people in the point-in-time count, but we know there are many more than that who are living in that way. We also know that most of them are actually Nanaimo community members who've been here for a fair amount of time. And that's actually very important. So this is not an imported problem per se. It's an affordable housing problem, and it's a locally grown problem in some respects. We know that many of them are homeless for 6 months or more. We know that they're chronically homeless, and that number has increased over time, and that's an important thing to recognize as well. I might also say that the count never captures really the hidden homeless who are there struggling to find places to live, trying to find a roof over their heads. They're ending up in shelter sometimes. They're being forced out of housing. The numbers are increasing in the plus 55 age category as a result of that. People who have lived and paid rent in apartments and places for a long time who can no longer afford it. So this is also very important as we look at where this is going. What are the trends? So we know that from the specifics that our staff, my staff, can't find housing anymore for people who are part of the Housing First community or rental support. We have over 200 people at the John Howard Society on our waiting list for housing. We know that that's difficult for us, and when we look around the coalition table, we can see that it's stressful for all of those people who are providing support for community members because we just don't know how to go to the next level. We don't know how to answer the need at this point, and it's very difficult to keep saying we don't have housing. So this is a challenge.
and it is stressful. At the same time, when we did the point-in-time count, we saw lots of compassion in the community, lots of people donating to the care bags that we put together. Lots of people donating their services, donating vet services on the point-in-time count data for the pets of people who are really important parts of their lives, for people who don't have a lot of family or a lot of connections. There were people cutting hair for free who continue to do that now after the point-in-time count. Donations of food. There's a local restaurant downtown that shall remain nameless at their request who's contributing food on quite a regular basis through the John Howard Society to people who need it. So the point-in-time count identified how compassionate this community is, and I think it reflects an important final statement for me, anyway, for this, is that I don't think the community is focused on this problem in a way that maybe we never have been before. And everyone, every level, business community, homeowners, the general public, everyone's focused on this. And that presents an opportunity for us to take bold action, to try and really get a hold of this and do what other communities like Moose Jaw have done and try and really figure out how to solve the homeless problem. And I'll turn it over to Sydney.
I'll just finish going through the slides. I think, we're talking about a crisis of homelessness, and we've got double the number we had 2 years ago. And as John mentioned, what we're experiencing on the service provider side is, we have a lot of compassionate folks who are committed to helping homeless, but the solutions, are it's now we have to develop and create new solutions to this. These are voices of the homeless. When we ask them, how did you become homeless, or why are you homeless? What are the major issues? These are the major issues: addictions, substance use, inability to pay rent, unsafe housing conditions, conflict with a partner. What are your barriers to housing? The thing that jumps out is that cost of housing. That's the main one, obviously, and not having enough income. How can we solve homeless? When we asked the homeless themselves, what they said was more affordable housing. Overwhelmingly, that was what they were asking for. Other services in terms of addiction support, employment supports, those were all there, but the affordable housing issue is the loud and clear voice from those living the experience. So just in conclusion around the point-in-time count itself, I think it's important to realize there is a crisis, that most of the homeless here are local citizens, and many of them have grown up here and lived here most of their lives, or have lived here 40 years. Nanaimo's experience is not unique. We're experiencing this. Our United Way covers obviously here in Malahat to the rest of the island, and we're seeing the same issues in Campbell River, Courtney Comox, the Cowichan Valley. This is not unique. Also, solutions to the problems can be found across the country. There's a lot of data, a lot of research, and a lot of planning that's going on as to what works, and that's what we'll talk about a little bit in the next section around the multi-year community plan. Solutions have to be comprehensive and bigger in scope than what this community has tackled in the past. If we're talking 400 plus homeless, and those are the chronically homeless, not the folks who are like my staff, John's staff, who are having trouble finding housing. They're living with their friends or their family because they cannot afford housing. The seniors that are on the wait list at Violet's shop, because they're people who've paid taxes and lived in affordable apartments that no longer are available to them. So we've got a different scope of homelessness in this community now. It's the chronic, and it's also the folks who've never experienced homeless in the past. So Violet, did you want to have a comment about what you're seeing, and then we'll move on to the next report.
So Island Crisis Care Society has the women's shelter, of course, as you know, Samaritan House. And we are in crisis. We definitely are. The effect that it has when we have to turn women away at our door. I mean, I've been to speak to you before about this. We so desperately need to expand. We need capital money to do that. And it's very, very difficult in the situation we're in. We're seeing so many seniors and so many heartbreaking stories. So I just really appeal to you to work with us as we try to do something about this crisis. Thank you.
Thanks. So that's our presentation on the point in time count. I think to acknowledge the city's been a significant player and helped with the plans in the past, and we'll speak about that in the next one. So, and I'm sure this isn't a surprise to any of you given what's going on with Tent City, et cetera. So do you want us to take questions or move to the next report?
So thank you very much. And our next report does tie in with this, I recognize. But if council has any questions regarding the actual homeless census that we've just heard about, then we'll take those now, I think. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just have a question on when you were doing your research. I never saw any mention of pets. Quite often we hear from people that they don't want to give up their pets. Was that taken into consideration, or did I miss it?
The individuals were asked, what their reasons were, and certainly people are concerned about their pets. But in terms of being one of the top, I'm looking at Andrew because Andrew crunched all the data for us. It wasn't necessarily the main reason why they were homeless or staying homeless. It wasn't the pet situation; it was access to affordable housing. But obviously, that's a key piece, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, I might want to just add to that, though, that the pets do become one of the barriers to housing, just as there are many other barriers to housing. That's one of them for some.
Well, we're hearing children, right? I mean, we're hearing lots of people who are families who can't find housing. So it's if you have kids, you can't. The landlords will look for another tenant. Thank you, Mr. Horn. Did you have a comment?
Just to introduce the next report.
Oh, I see.
Sorry.
Councillor Hong, I believe, has a question first.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's heartening to hear that the numbers have increased. What are the other community numbers like? Like, are we on par percentage-wise from everybody else, or are we kind of abnormal numbers, or are we kind of in line with the rest of Vancouver Island, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. The United Way, we funded the count up in Courtenay this year. We aren't quite seeing double the number in 2 years, but we're definitely seeing about 50% increase. Campbell River has doubled the numbers for sure, and we're just getting a homeless coalition up and operating up in Campbell River because their numbers are going through the roof. Duncan, we've seen 75%. We did 2 counts down there in 2017, and their numbers have increased around 75%. So what we're seeing is the experience, talking to our colleagues in Vancouver and Victoria, many folks are moving, and I mean folks who have money to buy houses and are moving to these communities because of affordable housing, and that is then changing the dynamic on the ground. So we used to have lower cost apartments that were available for us to help homeless get into. Those lower cost apartments just aren't there anymore, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the senior women in particular who are in low cost affordable housing now being turned over into something else, and they're losing their housing.
Maybe I could just mention, we get phone calls now from people saying, I've been renting my place for 15 years, and now my landlord has sold it, and I can't find anything else. So it's very difficult because the market's gone so high, and landlords are selling, and yeah.
Yeah, we've had 2 staff at United Way over the last year who've been unable to find an affordable housing, and we pay living wages at United Way, and they cannot find a place to live. So when you talk about working folks unable to find affordable housing, that means the apartments that we as service providers who used to work with landlords to house folks with the rent support from BC Housing into that, those landlords can choose different tenants and are choosing different tenants, or the supply is just changing. So we got a couple of, that your question is a good one. What we're seeing is lots of people want to move to Nanaimo, Campbell River, Courtenay, Comox, and that's changing the dynamic on the ground in terms of affordable housing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will move to the next topic, which is certainly related, and that is Nanaimo's Homelessness Coalition 5-year plan. Mr. Horan, you wish to introduce that?
If I may, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So the 5-year plan that's being presented to you now is from the Nanaimo's Homeless Coalition, and that group has been in place since 2001 and has been receiving federal dollars to address homelessness in Nanaimo. As part of that, the federal government asks us to submit a plan every 2 years, but it's very specific, and it's really about how we're going to spend the federal dollars. So the Homelessness Coalition felt that we needed a broader plan that encompassed not just the federal dollars, but the provincial and municipal and charitable dollars, and a plan that steers and guides us all. So the purpose of this plan really is to help us align our own efforts as a service provider community and as the governments, to help us direct resources that we may become available to us to address this problem, and also to seek funding for specific initiatives. So it's a way of really collecting all our efforts and focusing them in one direction. Lastly, I would say that the document that's being presented to you now, the request is that you receive the document, because when we have completed our City of Nanaimo Affordable Housing Strategy, which we will bring forward for Council to adopt, we would have this document, the 5-year action plan, as a companion document to that, if you will. So it'll come forward when we come with a complete housing strategy, because this forms one end of that strategy, the end of the strategy that aims specifically at those who do not currently have housing. So it'll be a part of our affordable housing strategy, and we'll bring it forward at that point for adoption. But tonight's really just a presentation of the plan itself for receipt.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. So we'll hear the presentation of the plan. We have several delegations, and then we'll entertain a motion to receive the document. Thank you. Ms. Madden.
Thank you very much. So as John mentioned, we're not here to go through the plan in huge detail. I think it's better when we come back after the affordable housing strategy is developed, and then both plans are looked at in conjunction. But I think it's important in terms of context as you're developing and considering the affordable housing strategy that's being developed, what we know from the homelessness side of the spectrum of housing. So I just want to remind this council that as you know, previous councils worked very hard with service providers and other funders to find solutions, and that was over a decade ago. And because we're a regional United Way, I often get called to go, as I mentioned, to work in other communities who are not as far as advanced as Nanaimo is in either service provision or a homeless coalition. So hats off to the previous councils and, of course, this council that continues to support the nonprofit sector through various initiatives and the rent supplement program in particular. But the foresight of the previous councils created plans, and we were able to get BC housing funding. We were able to apply for and get federal dollars from the HBS side. And not every community, and many communities in BC and across the country are going, we should have got in and got those federal dollars when we knew the homeless issue was rising. This community and this council, our council, was very proactive about that. And so for many years we've been implementing the plan and using the funding that we secured to help house the homeless and help people in shelters so that they were at least safe during the winter. And so in this room there are many service providers who are the folks delivering that plan. So where does that, when we move on and we're talking about having a double the amount of homeless in our community, as our consultant that we hired and worked with our homeless coalition to develop this plan, this is their quote that they said, "Put bluntly, Nanaimo faces pressures that threaten the integrity and sustainability of the current service system if not addressed." And so what that means is what your council, what our council, and what John and Violet and other service providers we've developed and are providing in terms of supporting the homeless has worked, but there's cracks in the system now because we're being overwhelmed by the numbers. And that's obviously what the merchants, I've been talking to the Chamber of Commerce and working with the downtown business owners. Obviously, we all care about the homeless, but what are we going to do about it? And that's why we've worked over the last year to develop a new plan. I'm not going to go over these issues, why the crisis, lack of affordable housing. We all know about the opioid crisis, and what we're talking about with double the number of homeless is we've got gaps in service and a lot of pressure on the service providers. The action plan is about working in conjunction with the affordable housing strategy, and it's really about we need an increase in affordable and supportive housing options, and we need additional funding to address the gaps in the continuum of service. That sounds like jargon, but what it means is if we don't have any options to place people out of shelters and into affordable housing, it's not good, and that's what we're seeing in your living as well. So I'm not going to go through all the details of the approach. I think we can address those when you get the affordable housing strategy. You can read the plan. But I guess what I would say in conclusion is right now BC Housing has announced huge amount of funding available for communities. I was on a national call today about the homeless partnership strategy. They are renewing that funding for this community for the next 10 years. We'll get a 5-year contract by April 1st. So the feds are coming on board again with their funding. BC Housing has already said they're available and willing to fund projects. The question is around access to land and having a council that's willing to say we're going to have scattered sites and we're going to need to invest in at least 300, if not 400 affordable housing options to house the chronically homeless. And it means we've got to continue to work with Island Health that obviously provides a lot of the supports. So 2 levels of government have said they're willing to fund the solutions in this plan or parts of it. Oops, sorry. So that's it in terms of the plans there. It's bought in by over 22 organizations and funders in the community. We'd like to work with the city once the affordable housing strategy is developed. And I think there was a couple of comments that John and Violet wanted to make just in terms of the plan.
Yeah, I just wanted to just tell you about a couple or 3 examples of why this affordable housing matters. We know that and the research suggests to us that when people are housed, clearly everything in their lives stabilizes in very significant ways. And so 3 examples came to mind for me. One is that we house about 60 people in market rental housing. And in our experience over the last 2 years, 3 years, while the opioid crisis has been going on and people are dying in the streets, literally, we've had no one who has overdosed and died in supportive housing. And we've had 2 people who left that housing who did not. So once they went out of that supportive housing, so which is a good example of how, the implications of this for people's lives. We see that incarceration rates or crime rates decrease. We've one example of a person who spent 23 years in and out of correctional facilities and has been housed with us for the last 2.5 years and hasn't been involved at all in the justice system and has a job and is stabilized in many different ways. So another good example of that. And we also know that people start to build relationships and start to stabilize in many other ways. Community members start to connect with people once they're housed. So it's really important that we figure out ways to address this because it helps all of us. It doesn't just help the people who are housing. And finally, I just want to acknowledge 3 people here today. Andrew Thornton, who did the work on the point-in-time count. He was both the coordinator and the statistician on that. And 3 people in the audience who are members of the housing team, Tyler Turnbull and Andrew Ferguson, who every day get up and go out there and try and help people who they're trying to house. And I think that we should recognize the good work that they do, because they do incredible work every day.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I often wish I could share some of the stories. Certainly from the United Way side, we see the folks who've come out of homelessness, found housing, found work, get their kids out of care, get up to VIU, and get an education. We see those folks and we meet those folks, but there's a lot of others that we'd like to go on that path through that, and also cut our costs in terms of policing and all the other pieces that if they aren't housed. So I'll take questions, or John, is there anything else that you want to add?
Thank you very much.
Any questions from council at this point? Councillor Hong.
Thank you. This is kind of uplifting news that we have a plan coming forward and what we need to do with housing. The question I have is with regards to drug addiction, and is that your department as well for housing with people that are addicted to drugs? Do you put them in the market housing, or is this a different category that you guys house, or are these just people that are homeless because of increasing rent prices and as such? Is there a difference?
Homeless are a whole mix of folks, but John, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, so we, addiction is a medical problem, and we don't not house people because they have addiction. We try and support them in their housing and try and help them to become good tenants. This is an important piece of the puzzle so that they can actually remain in housing. We ask that they not disrupt other people if they're in market housing that's shared with other folks. But we do our best to try and manage that situation to help them to stay in housing. We talk about wet housing or dry housing. There's limited dry housing, frankly, in the community. There are a sizable number of people who would like to be living in housing that doesn't have that as a challenge with their neighbors. But and we have a little bit of that. But in general terms, we don't discriminate based on use or not use.
And then if I can follow up on that question, I think exactly what I want to get to with regards to wet housing and dry housing, do you see the need from what you can manage more needed dry housing at this point? Or, and we talk about addiction and drugs, which is a different issue, but for helping you guys and the counts that you're doing and the numbers that we're seeing with homelessness, more dry housing is preferred?
I think there's a shift from probably 4 or 5 years ago in terms of, there was a real focus that we needed wet housing, and I think now we need more wet housing and more dry housing, and that's because there are many folks that were interviewed, and I know that Violet's nodding her head, and many other that do not want to be in wet housing. They've gone through recovery, they want to stay. Continue on their recovery, and they would like an option to live that way. And that's true of the shelters as well. Some people don't want to be in the shelters because of that. So, what's the number, John? Yeah. So, I mean, that's the reality right now. We don't have enough dry housing as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we actually have dry housing up in the North End, and we have down in the same building as Samaritan House. We have the supportive housing there, which is, they can't use on site, but they can be in their addiction. And we find that the waiting list is for not the North End, but the one in the South. So we definitely need more of both, I would say. But from what we're seeing, they need the supports, and Housing First definitely works. And we do see that when people are provided that housing, they are stabilized. We see their health get better. It takes a while, but then eventually they start to look towards moving forward and maybe looking to seek treatment and get the help that they need. So it's very important.
If I can just add one more piece to that, which is your lead really, is that the other piece of that is that there really is very limited opportunities for people to get the support they need when they want to become clean and sober. Mm-hmm. And that's an opportunity for us. We have the first supported recovery housing therapeutic community model in BC here, as well as the Guthrie program in Nanaimo Correctional Center, which is a one of a kind. But they're very limited, and frankly, there's a huge waiting list for that as well. So,
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
I'll just say thank you very much, John Horn and the staff, for putting this together. It's obviously, I've lived through 10 years of these now, and the housing situations where we had to stand up and fight about wet housing and take all sorts of abuse over it, but it's actually proven to be quite healthy in the environment. So the years of complaining is worthwhile. The service continuum really scares me. It's not, I have that my new saying is no one falls through the crack. They can't get into an office when it's open, when they need the help. how are we getting increased services? If we have a doubling of our numbers in a 2-year period, how are we approaching the provincial government to get more services on the ground in Nanaimo during this time, more crisis teams? What do we do? That's what we can do. I mean, it's a tough one for me, absorbing the social issues when the provincial and federal government have the money, they collect their money here in town. Half your tax bill goes to the province and the feds, or to the province anyhow. And so how do we increase our service continuum? Because that's the key point, is getting people on the line and getting them in a line to get help. How do we do that as a council?
Well, I think it's, once the affordable housing strategy is complete and we've got both reports, I think then it's about lobbying, and making a case for what we want in this community. And that's with the city council speaking as a voice with the coalition to say, here's what we'd like to see come to our community. And that's why we collect data, right? We collect data and we write reports so that we have the demonstration when we go in front of different levels of government for funding. So it's a good point.
Thank you for the work.
If I may add, Mr. When we work closely with the provincial government, particularly the Island Health on this issue, and where I would say the bulk of the resources are going right now are towards the opioid crisis. So while they are very concerned about the issue of homelessness, what they're super concerned about is the opioid overdose crisis we have in our community. So those two are in some ways entwined, in some ways not. But in working with them, the number one priority for them is to reduce the number of fatalities in our community that are associated with opioid use. And so there's a big push onto that, and incidentally it carries with it some services that address homelessness, but this is where we're focused right now, and that's the big thing for them is the opioid crisis. So to some extent that has swallowed up other issues along the way.
As a follow-up, I quite well understand safe injection sites after having run one for 39 days in Nanaimo and saw the horror on the street it's entertained by. Thank you. I got in trouble for that too.
So did I, what do you know?
Council, any other questions regarding the presentation? Thank you so much for presenting this evening. It's obviously a crucially important issue to our city, and we recognize that. So we have a number of delegations, and then we will look for a motion later to receive your report. Ms. Gurry, the delegations, I have 3 names. Is that correct? And they have 5 minutes each?
Yes, that's correct.
And the first one on my list is Councillor Armstrong is telling me 4.
Okay, we have Darren, not Mike, but Darren. Yes, and then Amber McGrath, Noah, and who was the 4th? No. Oh, no, he's not under that one.
All right, thank you. So our first delegation, our first delegation on this topic is Mr. Rinaldi, is it? Please come forward. If we could have your name and place of residence, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Darren Rinaldi, my place of residence is 410 Kennedy Street in Nanaimo. I guess everyone here would like to see the homelessness problem in this city solved, yes? My wife and I own our house on Kennedy Street. We have a small business and a commercial building that we own on Selby Street. We also own a business on the corner of Norwell and Victoria and a commercial complex there. Last night, people slept behind both of our commercial buildings in not very comfortable spots. And I think that's okay because, having somebody sleeping outside of your building maybe would help prevent somebody from trying to break into your building. In the last couple of years, we have been fortunate enough to travel through many European countries, Croatia, the Netherlands. We got to go to Australia, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and most recently I was in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, I was shocked. For walking for 4 blocks through the city, I couldn't walk on the sidewalk because the sidewalk was covered with tents for 4 straight blocks. And to see this is absolutely heart-crushing. And the polar opposite of that was actually being in the Netherlands. And I was surprised being in Amsterdam, where marijuana is decriminalized and every other drug is readily available. And believe me, walking around looking like I do, I am offered drugs quite often. I saw virtually no homelessness there. And I was kind of surprised at that, because we often equate drug use with homelessness. And I did 10 minutes of research, and I found out that the Netherlands has a policy where when they build housing there, when they build condominium units, rental units, that there is legislation that part of this is set aside for those less fortunate in our society. In our community, those of us who own real estate, when the tide's coming in, when we're in a boat, we're doing really well. Those who don't have that boat are treading water, and they're not doing all that well. And I'm seeing these, we're getting Vancouverized. We're seeing condominium developments that are selling out in a weekend. And these developers are making a lot of money. I decided to come here and speak today because I heard that there was going to be an injunction against Discontent City in Nanaimo. And I believe that is, I believe it's unconstitutional.
So, sir, I need you to speak to the topic of the five-year plan.
I'm sorry. What I want to say is I would like to see the city take bold steps towards solving this problem in Nanaimo. I think it's something that everyone can agree that we would like to see helped. As a business owner, I think every person in our community will benefit, and it will leave a legacy that every citizen in Nanaimo can be proud of. And as a business owner and property owner, I know that we have to help finance that. And I think for the tiny portion of people in this community, like 0.5% of our population is homeless, I think that we have the ability to do that. And that's all. Thank you all for your service.
Thank you, sir. I know it's a very emotional topic, and I appreciate that. I am going to ask the gallery to show restraint in your reactions, whether positive or negative, this evening, and this is a business meeting. Sir, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Brennan.
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you for coming forward with the comments you made tonight. I think you made a case for us to consider being more bold in our response, and I hope that the report we got just before you will help us and guide us along some way. So thank you very much.
I hope so too. Thank you.
I see no other questions. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to receive that delegation? Councillor Kipp, seconded. Councillor Armstrong, all in favor. Opposed, carried. Thank you. Our next delegation is Ms. McGrath, I believe. No?
Yes, here, Amber over here. Amber McGrath. And we don't have to bring in each delegation and vote on them, I think.
Thanks. Ms. McGrath, you have 5 minutes.
All right. My name's Amber McGrath. I've lived in Nanaimo for the past 23 years, raised my daughter here. I'm here not only to talk about affordable housing, obviously is a big part, but I've been working with the homeless with Discontent City. I just want to talk about my observations over the past few months. The homeless community has been displaced over and over and over again. And that's all I've seen is people being shoved around and told to go into the bushes. And, you know, when somebody's trying to rebuild their lives or rebuild their confidence, you know, it's really difficult when you don't even have a place to stay overnight. So, you know, we definitely have to address the homeless situation. I mean, at this time, now homeless are being criminalized by being ticketed for jaywalking by bylaw officers. They will be red zoned and won't be allowed in that area anymore. And that's basically criminalizing people and for being homeless, which is absolutely wrong. You know, there's violence, there's distrust, and these people need a chance, and they need a chance to rebuild their lives. And the fact that our community, and I'm not saying all of our community, there's been a lot of support towards homeless people I've seen and towards affordable housing, but a lot of community have been dehumanizing them, and that's not okay. And there's actually been like council members that have said, you know, for public safety, that they want to shut down the camp.
So, Ms. McGrath, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay.
First of all, I caution you against any personal comments about staff or council or members of the community. But secondly, I'm going to ask you to stick to the topic of the 5-year coalition plan. And if you'd like to speak to that, that's fine.
Okay, so about the plan, like, so all the people that are in Discontent City, what's the plan for them? Like, they need something now. There's 100 tents there, and I'm seeing them every day. And, you know, and again, I'll talk about the violence. I myself, and I have a home, was spit on and called horrible names, and the RCMP didn't take a file about it. So how are with the affordable housing, how are these people going to get into it? Like, everything is stacked against them right now. And it's absolutely heartbreaking when it comes to the mental health services. It comes to all of that. Like, it just doesn't make sense why we just can't put something together to help these people. And that's basically, you know, all I have to say about that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
I appreciate that. Are there any questions of the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much. And our next delegation is Mr. Noah Ross, is that correct? And if we could get your name and place of residence, please.
My name is Noah Ross. My place of residence is 108 Ashlar Avenue, and I think because of my professional role, I'm not going to address the council today, but I would request that my delegation be transferred to Kevin Donahue, who will speak in my place.
Is council all right with that transfer?
Yeah.
I'm seeing no problems. Again, I do need to repeat, as I have to the other two delegations, that we're speaking to the topic of the 5-year coalition plan. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, council. So yeah, first and foremost, I'm going to be speaking about the 5-year plan, and as such talking about the role that Discontent City plays in addressing the issue of homelessness in Nanaimo.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you as you get started. I just want to make sure that the clerk got your name for the record and place of residence. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
No problems. So right now, I mean, as most people here sitting in this room are aware, there is a less than 1% vacancy rate with regards to market rentals in Nanaimo, and that doesn't even begin to touch on affordability. And what I'd like to kind of propose is that Discontent City is providing an alternative to the reality that people experiencing homelessness in Nanaimo face on a day-to-day basis. The majority of the people living at Discontent City would otherwise be living in shelters, living in their vehicles, living in public parks, being forced to take down their tents every morning. They would be sleeping in doorways and alleyways on the streets in downtown Nanaimo. You know, and by no means is this a way to live, nor is it by choice of their own. Many people that I speak to down there have, you know, come upon hard times. I think one of the reasons that there's such a strong reaction, negative reaction from the community is because people are motivated by fear a great deal of the time. And I think when they see the homeless encampment that's sprung up at One Port Drive, I think it's a reaction to fear that this is something that could happen to them as well, or has happened to them, or could happen to them again, or is happening to their loved ones. I think it's important to keep the human face on this. I mean, these are people, a great deal of them from Nanaimo.
So, sir, I'm sorry. I'm trying to give you some leeway, but I do need to stick you to the topic of the 5-year plan.
The 5-year plan, I believe, is incredibly vague. I don't really realize what the 5-year plan is actually doing to address the issue of housing and lack of affordable housing and the issue of homelessness now in Nanaimo. There's over 350 people, according to the most recent count, in Nanaimo experiencing homelessness. And a 5-year plan is all good and well, but if there's nothing being done to address the issue with a sense of urgency and in the immediate term, the result is Discontent City. The result is the springing up of an encampment. the result of an inaction on government to provide affordable housing in Nanaimo and other communities like Nanaimo across the province of BC is people taking things into their own hands and providing for themselves what the state fails to do. Working in social service work here in Nanaimo, the impact that this tent city has had on the lives of the people living there is huge. People are able to sleep at night. They're able to have a sense of safety and security in numbers at Tent City. It's, again, like no one's saying that this is a permanent solution to the housing crisis in Nanaimo. And I can't speak on behalf of the residents at Tent City, but I mean, I don't think anybody down there sees this as a permanent solution to the lack of affordable housing in Nanaimo. I think the majority of people living in Discontent City would love to have, what you and I have, which is, the opportunity to go home at night, to shut the door, to sleep in our own bed, those kinds of things that I think we do take for granted. When we talk about supportive housing and low barrier housing, that's all good and well. There are definitely, cohorts of the homeless population in Nanaimo that would probably benefit from low barrier housing or supportive housing. But for a lot of people, it's essentially a prison, right? There are security cameras, there's collusion with police, you're not allowed to have guests overnight, you're not allowed to have your family, your children under the age of 18 come to visit you. It breaks apart Indigenous communities, it breaks apart our community. So a lot of people don't want institutionalized, top-down service provision, supportive housing as well. They want affordable market rentals. The amount that the Ministry of Social Development gears towards shelter is $375 a month. That's extremely low. I mean, it's nowhere near what the going rate for a one-bedroom or even a shared room for rent here in Nanaimo is. So something has to be done to address that. Something has to be done to meet the needs of the people at Discontent City, and I think the working poor here in Nanaimo as well. I have to work 3 different jobs in order to make sure that my bills are paid, that I'm able to afford my rent at the end of the month. It's a struggle. Every day is a struggle. So I think it's important to also frame this as not just an issue that disproportionately impacts those experiencing homelessness now, but the working poor here in Nanaimo. And Nanaimo, historically is a working class town. There's a lot of people where this isn't, the possibility of homelessness isn't so far off in the future. So I think, in terms of taking that into consideration, doing something to address the housing crisis immediately needs to happen. A 5-year plan is all good and well, but we need to do something now. And that's what Discontent City is doing, is it's providing something for people now. So thank you.
I got a question.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up, so good timing.
I have a question.
And there is a question. I believe Councillor Hong has a question for you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for actually talking to us, because I wanted to bring this up. You're advocating for affordable housing, but not supportive housing, from what I just heard you say, because nobody wants to be watched by security cameras and they want to come in and out. So what you pointed out, which was really important for me to understand, is you want affordable housing. If you get affordable housing, Discontent City will be gone. Is that what you pretty much have said? You said Discontent City is there because there's no affordable
While there's
housing.
more than one person experiencing homelessness in this community, I think that there's a need for Discontent City to exist. I believe that there's a requirement that there's a safe place for people experiencing a lack of housing to congregate safely without fear of harassment by police or by law or vigilante citizens in our community, targeting them simply because they're less fortunate than them.
But you said, I'm just trying to understand, you said that if we had affordable housing, Discontent City wouldn't be there. But now you've just said otherwise, that people should have a right to congregate.
Well, I mean, what I'm
confused.
saying is if there is a problem, then the solution in the interim period would be providing a safe space for people to camp without having to tear down their tents. So yes, assuming that homelessness is eradicated in Nanaimo, then yes, I feel like Discontent City would no longer exist simply because the people that would be living there would be housed, and they'd probably rather be living in a home rather than at One Port Drive.
But you said that they were not in favor of supportive housing?
I'm not, like I said, I'm not speaking on behalf of all the residents at Tent City, But there is an issue if we focus it strictly on low barrier supportive housing, because again, that does break apart families, Indigenous communities. It prevents people from being able to see their children. It's top-down social workers sort of running people's lives.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, because one of the key reasons I thought Discontent City was there is because this council turned down modular housing, but you're saying otherwise.
So,
because
Councillor Hong,
I'm confused on what
if I
he's
may,
presenting.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but again, our topic is the 5-year plan.
And I
not
agree
Tent
with
City.
Nope, and I agree with
not
the
Chase
5-year
River.
plan. And affordable housing
So if you
was
have other
mentioned.
questions for this delegation, let's have them, and otherwise, let's move on, please.
Yes, and I said the question I have is our 5-year plan talks about affordable housing. And I think that's what you've said, and you said it was vague. And from what we've heard from our experts is we need more affordable housing. So why do you feel that it's vague? And that's the question, because I read the plan, it was great. I think it's on the right step, especially with our affordable housing strategy. It's going to come forward that these two together, and what the work that everybody has done is we're pushing towards affordable housing. And as mentioned before, that's why I asked the question, wet or dry? And we've heard that there is a more need for dry housing now, and I think that is what we're talking about. So we are trying to get to what we want to do, right? Is that correct? So the plan is good, because according to you, you want more affordable housing.
I don't think that there's actually any concrete information in your 5-year plan as to when you'll actually be able to provide housing for the people that are experiencing homelessness in this community. There's a lot of theoretical discussion about, but there's no actual concrete dates as to when that would happen.
And that's why we were waiting for the affordable housing strategy, I think is what the delegation mentioned.
So as the conversation is continuously redirected every time I speak about Tent City to the 5-year plan, I felt like it was important to speak out to the fact that Tent City is a direct response to a lack of actual action on behalf of, council, the provincial government, the federal government.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Hong. Thank you, sir. No further questions. So could I have a motion to accept all of the delegations? I started to do them individually, but I think we'll do them as a group. So moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Hong. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, there was a recommendation regarding the Coalition 5-year plan, and that, I believe, Mr. Horn, was for Council to accept the report at this point. To receive it. Thank you. Councillor Hong making that motion. Is there a seconder? Second, I heard Councillor Kipp. Any discussion on receiving the report? If Councillor Hong, I still have you. Is that? No. Councillor Yoakum.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no problem receiving a report, but the problem I have in, not to sound disrespectful, but we receive reports and they seem to be received and not. I want to know where we're going to go with this. We're in a crisis here. And I like some of the recommendations in there. For example, 8.1, because Mr. Horn, you can only do so much. I like the recommendation 8.1 to bring someone on and help quarterback this, because we're in a crisis here. And so I like to I don't know if this is the night time, but not just receive and actually start an implementation plan of this report. If we're going to receive it, then let's put it to work, not let it sit on another shelf. So we got to really tackle this. A 5-year plan is great, but let's also deal with a 6-month plan and quarterback this really quickly here. We know we're under the assumption that we can still do some stuff with the modular housing, so let's get the appropriate sites and get moving on this. And then come back and report on some of the categories here. Like I really like 4.1, where rentals to supplement rentals, where we get creative with a lot of people probably have units and suites and whatnot, but they want to get the fair going market. So we can somehow get creative and think out of the box as the city and do tax breaks or whatever we can for some of these residents that want to house people. I think we got to really take bold moves here. Someone said the word bold. Well, I totally concur. Let's do that. So I'm rambling right now, Mr. Chair, I apologize, but I want action, not just receive. So I don't know where I'd go from this. So if you can help me here, that'd be great. Or staff. Thank you.
I'll let Mr. Horn reply as well, but I suspect the first step is receiving the report. Mr. Horn.
I could check the words out of my mouth, sir. But yes, and then secondly, what I would say is that the Nanaimo Homelessness Coalition, now that we as a body have adopted this plan, and by the way, the City of Nanaimo and the RCMP are the co-chairs of that coalition, Our goal now is to implement this plan, to take it from a strategic point of view into what do we do next point of view. Our first victory we accomplished today, which was that the federal government has agreed to renew the funding from 2019 forward for homeless projects in Nanaimo. That was a point of concern because it wasn't guaranteed they were going to renew that next year. They've announced that this morning, so that's fabulous. So we do have more money coming down the pipe at us. The second item is to look at those rent supplements. Those are a big piece of the puzzle because, as you know, we can't build housing overnight. It doesn't move that fast. But we are up against a very significant constraint, as Mr. John McCormick has pointed out. Even with all the money in the world, there isn't apartments to rent. So the third item, as Councillor Yoakum indicated, was that we need to encourage and somehow incentivize folks to take those units that are currently not being rented for whatever reasons and try to encourage folks to bring those onto the market. Because there's lots of them in our community that are built and available, but people choose not to rent them out. And so there's a bit of an untapped stock that is apparently available now that we might be able to reach into. And that's going to be one of our priority efforts, is to try to pull out of the community those units that we think are available but haven't been made available by the owners. So if that's an answer at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Horn. I appreciate that information, and your point is well taken, Councillor Yoakum. I think we recognize the need to move as quickly as possible, but this is the first step. So there is a motion to receive the report. I see no other speakers. I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 6D on our agenda.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Just on that subject now, on the receiving, I don't know if this would be the right place, but I would like to make a motion right now with a time frame to start implementing this plan, like today.
Can I make the suggestion that we have an offline conversation with Mr. Horn to talk about reasonable timelines?
Sounds good.
And hopefully that can be brought to a future council meeting and share that information with the public.
And that's where I'm just going to stress 8.1, where Mr. Horn can only do so much, so we got to army this up here. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next item is regarding Nanaimo Recycling Exchange. We have a presentation from Ms. Jan Hastings, and we have, I believe, we're up to 9 delegations speaking to this. So I'll ask for everybody's patience, and we'll start with Mr. Gesselbrock. Ms. Hastings, are you doing the presentation together? Yeah. Thank you. And again, if we could just get name and place of residence as you begin. Thank you.
Ben Gesselbrock, 106 Columbia Street. Good evening, council and staff. My name is Ben Gesselbrock, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange Board. Tonight, Jan Hastings and I, our Executive Director, will be presenting the business plan for the new NRE recycling facility. This facility is designed to meet the growing and changing recycling needs of this community and also help us move forward to a more sustainable future. 55% of recyclable materials are still going to landfill. This is not acceptable in this day and age. Here's a photo that I recently took at the RDN landfill at 4:30 on a Sunday. And you can see in there's a plastic toy fort for kid. There's a bunch of paper. There's cardboard. Most of these items are all recyclable or reusable and should not be in there. There's a new golf bag, couch, plastics, and you can see there in the center there is some forks and a carpet. And that was actually while we were standing there, 2 young guys from the north end came roaring up, jumped out of their truck and launched all this stuff into the bin. And they'd come up from the north end after a hard day of moving and to get rid of the stuff that they had no room for. Now, the recycling exchange, when it was open, would have still been open and was there for that exact reason, to capture that material. It's the community has a responsibility to make recycling convenient, and we need a convenient recycling facility so that people can do the right thing easily and drop off all recyclables and reusables. So through 25 years of dedicated community service in partnership with the City of Nanaimo, the RDN, the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange has mobilized a community of recyclers. Between 800 to 1,500 vehicles a day, including many small to medium businesses, visited the site, engaging in habits that will begin to lead us down the path towards the goal of a zero-waste future. So the zero-waste hierarchy here is a pathway towards the future circular green economy. And this economy is where goods are designed to cycle through consumption, collection, reuse, repair, and then remanufacture. Just like a natural biological system, there's no waste. Everything is just a resource for the next cycle. The Nanaimo Recycling Exchange follows this zero-waste strategy and works, this hierarchy is the highest best use of materials, and recycling and composting is very important, but higher up on the chain, which saves more energy for the community, are things like reuse and repair and reduce and redesigning packaging so that it can be recycled or limited. The proper collection of material is one of the crucial elements to make the future circular economy work. So although securing a convenient, comprehensive zero-waste recycling service is a priority and part of what we're proposing today, the NRE is here tonight along with, I believe, many residents in the galleries and folks tuning in at home.
Thank you.
About something much greater. We all share a value of a future sustainable community. And we're here tonight to make sure that this value is made a public priority through securing the future operation of a nonprofit that has a mission to promote sustainability and waste reduction through comprehensive services, education, and community development. China is no longer taking our recyclables, and when they do, they expect it to be zero contamination. This is a global trend since every country has to create their own recycling economy. We need zero contamination in our recycling streams if we want to produce a product that is economically viable for remanufacturers to use. To get to zero contamination, you need a hand-sorted, source-separated facility with trained staff and an educated public. This type of operation is too costly for private enterprise to run while offering a comprehensive service at an affordable price to residents. This is especially true if we need it to guarantee a paper trail that these materials make it to the appropriate recycling endpoints. These barriers to effective private service are why we need public investment in a facility with the objective of maximizing waste diversion from landfill. The RDN has adopted a zero-waste strategy and set a new goal of achieving 90% waste diversion from landfill. This is an ambitious but a necessary goal. The new RDN solid waste plan, however, also has decided to continue to rely and incentivize private enterprise to provide the majority of recycling services. In this environment, where the dominant organizations providing recycling services are private, including some multinationals, and by the very nature of the game must prioritize maximizing profit to stay competitive, we absolutely need a nonprofit depot to lead by example, prioritize public interest, and ensure that recyclable and reusable materials are kept out of landfill and incineration, even if it affects the bottom line. By definition, a nonprofit like the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange reinvests any surplus revenue towards its community objectives as opposed to pulling it out as private profit. The Nanaimo Recycling Exchange has already invested $1.5 million towards a project of a new hand-sorted, source-separated recycling facility. to meet future recycling challenges, all while fully recycling the costly, hard-to-recycle items to the tune of $300,000 per year. We need this investment to move forward innovation in the industry and raise the bar for what we expect from a recycling depot. The Nanaimo Recycling Exchange has been raising expectations by pioneering possibilities in recycling in Nanaimo for 25 years. And I'm impressed with the positive effects the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange has had on services offered by local industry, especially in the last 2 months. However, the bar can and it will be raised much higher. Over 7,500 people, often representing entire households, have written to you, urging you to deepen the city's productive relationship with the NRE and invest in this organization that is willing to be a community institution devoted towards the advancement of a zero-waste future. The NRE, with its new facility, will be properly equipped to fully serve out its mission and be this community institution. Not only will the new NRE be able to better provide a comprehensive one-stop drop for the full range of recyclables and reusable materials, including new items like mattresses and couches, it'll be better equipped to provide expanded services as a community hub for sustainability with such things as zero-waste education, research, advocacy, and outreach. Not only is this environment a perfect place for the community to come together to achieve a shared goal, the new facility will be much better suited to build on past successes of providing employment opportunities and job readiness training for young folks and those that have faced challenges to get into the job market. I appreciate these are added community benefits that do their part to help address the compounding factors that can lead to poverty. The new NRE facility is designed to give Nanaimo residents what they've come to expect, what they deserve, and most importantly, what they hope for. Council has asked for a business plan. We have delivered a business plan. It is well thought out, it is well costed out, and it's based on very solid community support. As you'll see, it is also affordable, costing the city roughly $10 to $15 per household per year. But most importantly, this plan is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for the community, it's the right thing to do for the environment, and most importantly, it's the right thing to do for the future. Jan will now present more on the project and cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And Ms. Hastings, if we could just have your name and place of residence for the record.
Good evening, Council. I'm Jan Hastings. I live in Nanaimo. I'm the Executive Director of Nanaimo Recycling Exchange. I'm just waiting for the right. There. Thanks. The NRE has now submitted a business plan to Council, and it fulfills two requirements. It shows you the business of the NRE, and it shows you our vision for the new facility with costs. The plan is comprehensive because we want you to understand the NRE. There is your centrally located, purpose-built, zero-waste facility that meets this community's needs for now and for the future. The first thing to know about this facility is it's not simply a replacement for this.
Not to me.
Sorry about that. Not a replacement for this. There's so much more to the vision. The thinking and planning that went into the design is based on what we learned from 25 years of working partnership between the NRE, the City of Nanaimo, and the RDN. It's based on research, pilot programs, and many visits to recycling depots. It's based on a proven and tested funding model. and it's based on the need for new job design for staff and volunteers, and especially for people with barriers to employment. It's based on what can happen with dedication to zero waste. It's also based on what the people there told us. People want to do the right thing. They do not want to spend their entire Saturday doing it. And they love the one-stop drop. I wanted research to back up this relationship that I heard about between convenience of the one-stop model and diversion. And I found it everywhere. One example from the Institute of Local Self-Reliance states that programs that drive the highest diversion target a wide range of materials, they're designed for convenience, and they require resident participation. Research also says don't make people walk more than 5 meters to find a recycling bin, or it's going in the garbage. Research says if somebody has to think longer than 5 seconds about what to do with the apple core or the coffee cup, it's going in the garbage. Research says people want to do the right thing, but they need the motivation from other people doing the right thing. That's what that place was to the people of Nanaimo. The NRE management and the board of directors searched for professionals who would understand our vision. We found them in David Poron and Darren Moss, both of who are leaders of innovation in our community. They both care deeply about this project. We also had a team of engineers and consultants and help from the city of Nanaimo that also provided extensive expertise and advice. We started with an empty lot and very little innovation in the field to draw from. Our instruction to our design team was to incorporate these principles. 90% diversion goal, convenience, both with location and the one-stop model. We know we needed more reduce, rethink, reuse, and repair. We wanted a sustainable footprint. We wanted zero waste for residents and businesses. We wanted to prioritize education. We know there's global pressures on recycling for 0% contamination. We know we want to deal with household hazardous waste. And we want this place to be the hub of sustainable living. Everybody wants to know why this costs $6.05 million. Here are some key costly elements. You have soft costs, which are your architects and engineers that do the design and permits. You have off-site civil work, connections to services and things like sidewalks. You need temporary services, which are needed for the build, like security, et cetera, and preparing the site. On-site civil work, which is the same as the off-site, but it's underground, not on-site, and site preparation for the actual build. We need concrete, and this plan needed all reinforced concrete. You need asphalt for driving and parking, and the building has 3 parts. North building has 2 levels, the covered structure where most of the recycling is done, and then the south building is also a 2-level building. Landscaping is required for street view and water management, and we also needed furniture and equipment. You put all these costs together, and you can see the number of 4.7 up there, and then you add contingencies and escalation, adding another large number onto that, and now you get to 6.05. So how do we pay for this? The City of Nanaimo staff report dated March 26 provided council with options to fund construction of the NRE facility. One possible option identified was that the City of Nanaimo could provide an annual grant for 25 years to service an NRE mortgage. So the NRE would secure the loan, and it would likely be around 6% interest, and the annual cost to the city would be approximately $467,000. We're presenting this annual grant as one possible option, knowing that choice of any option is entirely up to council. Pre-operational funding request. Back in July of 2017, when the NRE approached the city, there was still time for construction and relocation to the new site with minimal interruption to both services and revenue. Unfortunate delays have interrupted the schedule to the extent that the closure now means significant interruption to both services and revenue, but the NRE still has obligations. The NRE is therefore asking the City of Nanaimo to provide pre-operational funding necessary to support the NRE until normal operations resume at the new facility. Those include mortgage payments on the land, 3-month startup at that time, interim operational costs, which is just normal costs of doing business, and some interim services through the 3 Rs contract continuation. The only thing out of the ordinary up there is the 3-month startup. Every other thing it would be just normal NRE business. The 3-month startup need is the result of being closed. We want to show the NRE contribution to date and going forward. The NRE has contributed something close to $1.5 million with the purchase of the land and mortgage payments up to now, site design costs to date, and development costs to the building permit stage, which is where it's at right now. Future contribution includes continuing to carry the mortgage for the land. Of course, this is impossible to read. One thing about this is we did work closely with the City Finance Office to make sure we provided all the needed information for this process. We provided the income statement with actuals for fiscal 2016 through 18, and then a 10-year projection out to 2030. You can note that the NRE fiscal year runs from April 1 to March 31st, and so that means right now we're in fiscal year 2019. And on this slide, the detail lines have been removed so we can fit it all on one page. The complete report is in the document that you received called the projected income statement. You can also note that the requested funding from the City of Nanaimo is totaled by calendar year on page 3 of that document. Some general statements about this is it's based on a very conservative forecast for revenue returning to normal, to pre-closure levels, and then some subsequent growth. It's based on the RDN $300,000 grant being available for 5 years only, and it's based on suspension of the RDN and NRE yard waste program, and it's based on continuation of all current funding. And one other thing is the NRE has been a viable organization for 25 years while providing zero waste services in Nanaimo, and typically reports a modest surplus each year. This is our tested and proven model. We've proven zero waste recycling is possible in Nanaimo. Nanaimo now has a new 90% diversion target. Zero waste recycling is needed to meet that target. And zero waste recycling doesn't make money, it costs money. So stable funding is critical. How will this roll out? Nanaimo Council approves NRE grant request. The NRE would then secure the construction loan from our lender. The building permit would be finalized. Tectonica would then begin to tender contracts. We would have shovels in the ground by August 2018. Occupancy permit July 2019. And September 2019, grand opening. If you imagine a world with no waste, it comes with benefits to our own community. These are some of the benefits. I would like to take you on a tour. The new family arrives in Nanaimo needing bedroom furniture for 3 children. The neighbors tell them to go to the NRE where they find beds and dressers at the reused market and can't believe it when staff gives them free bedding and a pair of runners for each of the kids. While there, they ask questions about how to recycle at the depot and at the curb. They learn where to get their yellow bags or bins and their recycling garbage pickup schedule. They learn someone's name. They learn from 3 people in 10 minutes how to recycle, and they're instantly part of a community of people looking after their city. Wow. They did not have a facility like this where they lived before. Nanaimo has a new family of recyclers. 1,000 to 1,500 other people are going to come to the NRE that day. Household recyclers, easy find parking in oversized stalls. An NRE staff person appears with a wheeled cart for loading their recycling from the side or the rear of the vehicle. They load the cart and staff guides them to the correct drop-off areas for the products. On the way, a volunteer appears and asks them if they have batteries or printer cartridges, which they take up to the other end of the building. At the drop-off tables, staff demonstrates correct recycling by teaching categories for separation and where to recycle each item. Why does the styrofoam cooler go downstairs while the styrofoam packaging stays upstairs? The recycler puts them up on the table and nothing goes away to bins or bags until there's 0% error, known as contamination. A volunteer takes one person to the rinse station with some containers, while another directs a person with the metal ornament away from the scrap metal bin to the reuse market, where its life can be extended. At the hand wash station, the recycler notices a divertometer with a 90% number, some pamphlets advertising home sorting stations, and a public meeting notice with the title, #BreakFreeFromPlastic. NRE staff is always nearby at the ready to teach and reignite the passion for recycling and caring about the beautiful place we live. Why is there time to talk? Education is my job. Why is it so quiet? Because moving equipment is now electric. Heavy equipment operates away from household recyclers. Finally, the NRE walks the talk. It's RDN Clean Out Your Garden Shed Day. Bring those cans and boxes of questionable liquids and powders you don't want to use but you don't know what to do with. You can be sure of environmental safety when you take your products to the NRE. The site is designed to A, prevent, and B, capture any spills that could occur. The liquid and household hazardous waste collection area has locking tanks situated inside a raised curb to capture incidental spillage. The floor slopes from this area, leads to a drain, and an outside storage tank that's large enough to hold the entire volume of everything in that building in case of failure or spill. Make sure you take home the list of recyclable outdoor products given by the attendant. The exterior has both an oil interceptor and a jellyfish filter that stops liquid and solid waste that would otherwise make it into a storm system, with final treatment through an on-site bioswale, which is a landscape element designed to concentrate or remove debris and pollution out of the surface runoff water. The mobile business employee arrives for the second trip of the day, traveling down a designated laneway, clearly marked at the entrance gate. One stop makes dropping off plastic and styrofoam and cardboard easy, but the recycler mentions he's the only one in the company that recycles. Staff person tells him about the membership program with the free company waste audits that can save time and money for businesses. The driver takes away the pamphlet to give to his boss. On the way past the reused market, he buys a bag of cut rags made by the volunteers from donated textiles. Here comes a corporate member with a trailer load of plastic films sorted into categories in NRE mega bags, the way they were taught by the NRE Zero Waste educator. NRE staff offloads the bags, logs the weights, give the driver replacement bags, and business is done. It is bike day at the NRE market. All bikes and parts donated by the NRE to Hub City Cycles have been repaired and are now back for sale. Families and cyclers come to get a bargain bike. Hub City Cycles staff demonstrates basic maintenance and repair using recycled oil and reclaimed parts. A volunteer loads donated sports gear for distribution to outlying thrift stores from Arrington to Ladysmith. It's suitcase day at the reused market. Instead of using bags, shoppers can fill a suitcase for $5. Inside the market, the VIU student sits at the workbench, watching the volunteer, who's a retired electrician, repair a lamp, a speaker, a vacuum cleaner. Her job is to deconstruct appliances and catalog the parts. The John Howard Community Hours volunteer removes metal screws from plastic toys so they can now be recycled. It's closing time at the market, and yet there's a buzz. It's podcast day, and people are gathering around the market wood stove, waiting to hear this week's Eco-Friendly Families presentation. It's a great normal day at the NRE. That is our NRE vision for zero waste in Nanaimo.
in closing, I'd like to take a moment to thank all the community who's engaged in this process with us to help move this project forward. I'd especially like to thank our Executive Director, Jan Hastings. Many years ago, Jan took the reins of this organization when it was down, and she worked hard to turn it around and make our operation sustainable. Jan's been an example to me and to all of us as someone who persistently stands up for what is right, even when the going gets tough. Thanks, Jan. Now, we've done our presentation, and it's time for Council to decide whether to put forward a motion that will secure the funding necessary to allow the NRE vision to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask Council if there are questions for the delegation. I will ask Council, though, to first of all, of course, make sure that you're respectful, and secondly, to keep your questions to the delegation's topic. I'd not want to wander into a general discussion. I want to keep this on focus to the NRE and their proposal. So with that understood, Councillor Hong, you're up first.
Thank you. I got several questions, but maybe I'll phase them in. Thank you for your presentation. Ben, the first one just a question with regards to what you saw at the RDN landfill, I guess, is that truck coming in, dumping everything in that dumpster and leaving. I don't know, maybe they were just lazy, or maybe they were not educated. So my question to you is, where is NRE right now in educating those kind of people not to do that? Because that's what we gave you $51,000 a year, $52,000 a year for education.
Let me just get it.
So,
and then go ahead. The education is there, the facility is not. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you. So are we saying...
Councillor Hong, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. Gallery, I need your cooperation as well. If there is applause after every comment, we will be here all night. And I'm going to ask people to refrain from either supporting or disagreeing with comments or answers that are made. So I do ask your cooperation there, please. Let's make sure that everybody can be heard, and we'll move through this respecting everybody's point of view. Councillor Hong?
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, I didn't know that we're only giving you $52,000 for people that come to your facility to get educated. You don't do outreach? So with or without a facility, are you doing anything right now to educate the public?
The 3 hours contract is suspended right now. We're closed. We're not doing business.
And prior to, that's what I was saying. So prior to that, they actually had to come to your facility to get educated?
Pardon me?
Well, or were you out in the last year when you were funded to be out educating people? Were you at schools? Were you at wherever these things are for people to recycle? Like, I'm just asking for that person that came and dumped it. Maybe they were not educated. Maybe they didn't know that there was education. So did they do an educational outreach, or do you do that?
Education up until we closed was in schools and in the community, on site, and everywhere. We've always done education. Now that there's no facility, then, and especially no reuse market, where everybody knows when you move, at the end of the day, you take the whole truck to the reuse market and get rid of everything. That's what's happening.
We're closed currently right now, Councillor Hong.
Well, and I understand that, and I just wanted to know what you were doing with the education. So you were saying that you are going to schools. Thank you. With the next question, that you said it is too costly for private companies to do what you do. It's true. It is too costly. Recycling does cost money. So maybe we should look at funding private companies as well, because I think recycling, in order to get to our 90%, you're just the one little piece of it from what we're told from the RDN. And I think that the private guys are going to have to step up, and they might need money as well to do it. So, and I think to level that, it makes perfect sense. I got an email from somebody, and they completely agree that we should fund everybody. So I think everybody should get $6 million, and I don't have a problem with that. So that is something that I do have a question about.
There's no question.
Do you think private companies should get public funding as well to help with recycling, as you said it was too costly?
That would be up to you. We're here with our proposal and our vision for zero waste in Nanaimo.
Thank you. And again, this is not about you. This is about waste for us as a council. We want to get to 90%, and that's what we strive to do. And one organization isn't going to do it. I think we need help from everybody. Is that true? Do you agree with that?
So, Councillor Hong, if I may, again, I would request that you ask questions related to the presentation and the plan.
Well, that's it. Great, thank you. And the next one I'll do is some other ones. But with regards to your financials, I haven't really gone over these, and I haven't gone over these with staff. So I would like some questions, but I think I'll refrain a lot of them, but I will ask a couple. And I know that we haven't discussed this with staff, and we were hoping to. Your recyclable products, services, contracts, your operating revenues, you showed that you had an income of $790,000. I guess these are in thousand numbers. And how does revenues, including donation, reusables, and cash, equate to $347,000? That's in your 2018 number or actuals or 27.
Sorry, how does it do what?
How do you get to that number with regards to revenues?
Could you tell me the year, please, and exactly where you're looking?
Just under your operating revenues, the first one, you have 4 or 5 items there, recyclable products and services contracts.
Yes.
So how did you get to $840,000 as a revenue?
I don't know, just to interject here, if it's appropriate to get right into the details. Like, there's a lot of people here, and it's kind of, this is questions that the staff can go through. All the information's there, and this is not really the time to...
And you're right. I think you are definitely right, and I think that's why we can't make a decision.
We can't make a decision.
Without information, so thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you very much for your very detailed report. You'd asked before what you could do, and this is one thing that I had asked for, and it's very good. I do have a question that keeps going through my mind, and I've talked to the private industry, and I know I've talked to you before. Is there any possibility where we could look at a private, nonprofit, and a public relationship where we could all work together to do this? Is that something that's feasible, possibly?
So I did put in the plan that a 5-year review and evaluation of what we do should include that kind of evaluation. And I have ideas of what areas we are into that a zero waste facility maybe doesn't need to be involved in, like, you know, yard waste and wood and things that we charge people to bring or to drop off, and we need heavy duty equipment, etc., to deal with. It would make sense to separate that off, and then a private organization could also benefit from this central location and this new facility funded by the city. So I put that right in the plan because I believe we should look at that. One thing though, we take products that still fund zero waste recycling. The $300,000 from the RDN is in there. It's in there for 5 years only. That's the commitment. It's in there conditionally. It's not, we don't get $300,000 just given to us every year. We apply for it. It's going to be accepted or not accepted. We provide the services first, and then we invoice for it. So it's just not an automatic. But that is really important funding for zero waste recycling. And if that funding disappears after 5 years, we're right back where we always were in self-subsidizing. You don't get zero waste recycling if you can't pay for it. It's got to be paid for somehow, and that was our motto.
And then my second question will be for staff after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add, there has always been a collaboration and a synergistic effect between the nonprofit and the private industry and the municipality. We forget that the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange was the first recycling center in Nanaimo providing comprehensive services, and we've developed a market of recyclers in this town that the private industry has benefited greatly from. There was a private recycling center that moved actually right across the street from us that managed to persist just 5 years ago, and because of the attraction and how much we've stimulated the market for that. And so this is how we move forward in this community, because there's a huge market still of recyclables in the landfill, and we need to all work together. And so with the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange as the head of the spear, basically raising expectations, training an educated population through the recycling facility, everybody benefits. And so it is quite a partnership.
I'd just like to say one more thing about that. We've always had a relationship with the privates. So Regional Recycling moved right across the street from us. They donated their plastic that they couldn't make any money from to us, and we recycled it for free. Hey, that's good. It's more zero waste recycling. Another private recycling depot, I took the manager with me to meet my plastics broker. She came back, ended up 2 new revenue streams for plastic film for her depot. And then what I did, it's in the report, with a waste hauler a couple years ago, did a huge study with the school district because they were having too much contamination. The recommendations from that study, which the NRE did for no cost, made a number of recommendations for the school board and the waste hauler to decrease contamination and both save time and money. Some of the recommendations completely easy, and others a little bit more tricky, and you would need someone, a professional in recycling, to know how to make those things happen. But we've always collaborated with the private sector, and I believe we all need to step up our game because we have a 90% diversion now. We all have to step up our game and do more.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Hong, are you on again, or did I make a mistake?
Well, if nobody else wanted, I just wanted to make the point that I fully support recycling, and I've talked to Ben about what Councillor Armstrong said with regards to a private-public partnership, and I still stand by that. And I think that the NRE does a phenomenal job in education and outreach and finding sources for these hard-to-recycle products to go homes to. And what I suggested before is they should be a clearinghouse, funded by the city, fully subsidized to cover the costs, working with private. If there's money to be made in the products, then it goes to them. If they can't find a home for it, and it goes to you, and you guys find a home for it. I think that model is ideal, and it's publicly funded, and that's what we're trying to do. We're all trying to get to recycling. And I think that is something that I hope you guys really looked at before. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. And
May
I'd
I
like to move
respond
on.
to that?
Very quickly, please.
Very quickly. The problem with that concept is it completely disregards the one-stop drop concept of convenience that increases diversion. We need to increase diversion.
And I want to respond, I'm sorry, and I agree. But nothing stops the regional recycling from being that one stop as an outlet for you, because this is what I would like to see, not just one central. I would like to see them all throughout the island where you can drop anything and everything off at the closest recycling location. And then they take that stuff to you. I think that is where we're going to help with the 90% diversion. I'm not saying that it's not a one stop. I'm saying take it to them. You have a warehouse and you sort. I'm not discontenting of all. I'm not saying anything bad about what you guys have done. I think you are phenomenal at finding those markets. But being a clearinghouse for hard to recycle products is where the funding should go to.
So I'm going to jump in here because, again, we're straying into opinion, debate, oration, rather than questions on the presentation. So I think I'm going to end it there. Ms. Gurry?
Oh, go ahead and you can receive the
Well, what I was going to suggest is that we receive the delegation. Councillor Armstrong, is that all right? I see your name on the queue.
I'm actually for staff.
All right, thank you. So we'll receive the delegation. I'd like to do that first, and then we have a list of 9. We'll receive the presentation. We have a list of 9 delegations at 5 minutes each. After that, there'll be a chance to ask staff questions, and I'll be looking for some type of motion to move this forward. Now, we did have a scheduled recess at 9 o'clock. We can, I would suggest either take that now and have the delegations afterwards.
Move to recess.
That's what I was going
I'm
to suggest
seeing
as
a
well.
consensus that we should do that. So thank you very much for your presentation. We'll have a 10-minute recess, then hear the delegations. Council?
They say it's not streaming on TV. You see, you want to know why it's not streaming.
Yeah, Sheila's going to talk to that. If we could get members of the gallery to get seated, please.
Get at it, gang.
This is what you do.
Everybody start kissing.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We still have a long agenda to get through, and we'd like to get back to it. And just before we resume with our delegations, I'm understanding that we have some technical difficulties with our streaming of this meeting. So, Ms. Gurry, did you want to elaborate, please?
Thank you, Chair. So just through you to council and to the public, we are having some technical difficulties and our live streaming hasn't been working all evening. We've been trying all evening and we're still trying, but unfortunately it's not working. It is broadcasting on Shaw, and we will have a DVD of tonight's meeting, so it will be available tomorrow on our website as a video, but very unfortunately, we just can't seem to get it to work, and our technical support isn't responding to our requests for help, so our apologies.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. So we're going to press on. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a total of 9 delegations at 5 minutes each to speak on this topic of the recycling exchange. I'm going to ask that the audience be respectful of people's different viewpoints and opinions in this. Council will have an opportunity to ask questions if they wish of each of the delegations, then to ask questions of staff, and at that point we will then be looking for a motion to move this topic forward. So our first delegation is Mr. Ian Gartshore, and if you could give us your place of residence, Mr. Gartshore, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and council members. My name is Ian Gartshore. I live at 353 7th Street in Nanaimo. I appreciate this opportunity to again address you and to staff. Just want to begin by saying, like many others, that we are on the traditional territory of Nanaimo First Nation. I want to honor them and respect them. And I'd say that First Nations, Indigenous peoples around the world understand, certainly did before European contact, what it means to embrace zero waste. They didn't waste anything. Everything that went through their hands got reused in some form or another, or was taken back and used by the earth. So I respect them, and I honor them, and I would love for us to get closer to that ideal. Now, of course, as a city, we don't have any say over packaging and over lots of different practices that go on, but we do have the ability to respond to the situation. I also want to say something about zero waste, not just with materials. Earlier, we heard some passionate pleas about what we need to do with homelessness. Homelessness is obviously from many different causes, but one of them is a lack of income, and one of them is a lack of training. And one of the things that the NRE has done so very well, and I understand they will do even better if they get to reopen, is to give people who are hard to employ valuable skills. Without them, would we have more people on the street today? I suspect so. So zero waste isn't just about materials, it's about people. I wanted to say something about the definition of zero waste and recycling, because there are two different definitions. One for zero waste is that it can include incineration. Recycling means that things can be burned up. And that is a fake definition that has come into the marketplace in the last decade or so. What the NRE is talking about, I don't know about the others, but what they're talking about is repurposing, reusing, remanufacturing, all of those above, not incineration, not landfill. I looked at a copy of the Vancouver Island Recycling and Waste Industry Coalition, VIREC, if I'm saying it properly. I am a businessman, and frankly, I am disgusted with this letter. Disgusted because it doesn't really address the issues at hand that are being addressed by the NRE's proposal. I am also a person who runs a nonprofit counseling center. I understand the difference between the two, and each have a valuable role to play. This letter has so many holes in it. I'm not a negative person, but I think that we need to say, all right, the NRE was accountable. Councillor Armstrong said, we want a business plan. I can't make a decision without that. Right. So they put together a business plan with staff, and I think a very impressive one. But I don't have an understanding of what this letter means in terms of their business plan. So, for example, their letter praises their ability to pick up where the NRE left off as though it was a big secret. We've known for years that the NRE needs to have public funding to carry on. The letter states that without a competing NRE facility, taxpayers will save more than $6 million. Well, if we go ahead with this, it's going to cost us about $10 to $15 per person, per house, to afford the center. How much does it cost us to drive all over the city to drop off our materials to the for-profit places? I'd be willing to bet that it costs that every couple of trips. And we can have this a world-leading facility that is truly authentic zero waste for $10 or $15 a year that's all located in one place, that does all of those things plus way more. Not just recycling, which is great, but education, but repurposing, having the store there, being able to train people. The NRE alone provides us with the vision. They have given us the sense of we can do this, whether we go to a for-profit or not. We are inspired by them. Only they can take us beyond the companies and and governments, by the way, who have recycling facilities. They can take us way beyond what these others can do.
I must get you to wrap up, sir.
And so I want to say thank you. I had lots more prepared, but of course now I'm only given 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions of the delegation? Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Ian, and I agree with you. Let me ask you a question. You live on 7th Street, you said.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't it be nice if you only had to drive to 10th Street to drop off everything instead of all the way to Kenworth or up there? Wouldn't that be nice? Would it?
Right.
Would it?
Nice, yes.
Great, thank you. That's my question.
Would it satisfy me? No. Will I take my materials to a place that's trying to get rid of the NRE? Nope, not in your life. In fact, I've stockpiled my stuff, and I know quite a few people others stockpiling their stuff because they refuse to take it to a place that we do not know whether they actually are recycling. Are they going to spend $300,000 a year to recycle the materials that only the NRE's been paying for? No, no chance. I'm not going to take it there.
Okay. Good, thank you.
I see no further questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Next delegation is Mr. Tim McGrath. And following Mr. McGrath will be Mr. Cookman and Mr. Erickson. If we could have your name and place of residence, please, and you have 5 minutes.
Tim McGrath, City of Nanaimo. This one-stop shop, I've got a much better solution. The city currently in their garbage pickup has garbage 1 week and then recycle the next week. So for me, if I want to do my recycling, I'm going to go to one recycle shop 1 week, and I'll go to the other one the other week. It's rocket science. Just saved the city close to $10 million. Not a problem. There's 12 recyclers in the city now. We don't need to spend $10 million to have it number 13. I would suggest to you that you take the money that you're contemplating putting towards the NRE, suggest to everybody to use my solution and go to a different recycling center every second week, and take the money and put it towards the housing issue. I consider the housing issue more pressing, certainly more impactful than somebody's pipe dream. We all know that zero waste is impossible. Even their own chart shows that it's impossible. Right at the bottom, they have that little red triangle. We're never going to get to zero waste. How much money are we going to waste? I would suggest put it towards the housing. You solve the housing problem immediately. We want action immediately. The NRE is at least their own plan. We're going to support them for the next 2 years before they can actually get back to doing what they wanted to. It's a pipe dream. Spend the money where we have to. That's it.
Thank you, sir. I see no questions. Next is Mr. Craig Cookman. Sir, if you would give us your name and place of residence for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Hi there, my name is Craig Cookman. I live at 198 Crossbow Drive.
Thank you.
And I'm here representing the Vancouver Island Recycling and Waste Industry Coalition. And I want to start by saying, like I did last time I spoke to you folks, that we as a coalition support the NRE in their position as an educator around recycling and zero waste in the region. But we do not support them as a operator or competitor to the private sector in this arena. The coalition, of which many of the members are here tonight, are long-established Nanaimo-based companies who have been committed to working with the City of Nanaimo and the Regional District to continue to divert recyclable materials from the regional landfill with our collective of over 300 employees and over 12 locations, and want to continue to do so without subsidized competition, allowing Council to disperse the requested monies towards many higher priority issues, one major one I feel we heard about here this evening. As stated in our letter sent to Mayor and Council May 25th, after the unannounced closure of the NRE, we have been hard at work to heighten consumer awareness with our public information campaign, of which our What Can I Recycle and Where directory was born, informing residents of our locations throughout the region and showing what materials can be accepted at each of the locations. We have all seen a significant increase in traffic and also had a lot of positive feedback from clients, citizens, and the Regional District of Nanaimo and City of Nanaimo administrative staff on our efforts with this campaign. At our site alone, I'm speaking on behalf of Milner Group here, we have noticed a 75 person per day increase, with the majority of those clients dropping off yard and garden waste. Our increase at Milner Group over our typical volume in yard and garden waste as a dollar figure from the NRE closure date to today is $21,600. Our tipping fee for this material is $40 per metric ton, opposed to the NRE fee which was $50 per metric ton, which equates to a savings of $5,400 in less than 3 months for the clients who recycled at our facility rather than the NRE. Keep in mind, this is only one example of one product at one facility. Many of the products accepted at one example of one of the products that are accepted at our site, and we are just one of the facilities in the region that I'm speaking here tonight on behalf of. Another positive that has come out of this campaign is the communication with the public on what is accepted in the expanded curbside program, which is still being rolled out and will be an even larger part of waste diversion than it has been in the past once its full potential is realized. It is important to note, since the closure of the NRE, the contractor that handles all curbside recyclables pickup for the City and Regional District of Nanaimo has noticed a high percentage increase in volume, showing the success of this program. We know staff at the RDN and City are working hard on this program, but we believe more should be explored here to see what is possible for the existing program and its infrastructure. We feel a great number of local residents are now more informed of their options when it comes to recycling and showing their commitment to recycling and what is the new norm for recycling in Nanaimo, which has been proven by their attendance to our locations and the feedback we are receiving from them. We as a group want to continue to stress we were here before the NRE, during the NRE, and with our proven business plans and operations that we can adapt quickly to any industry changes. We'll continue investing our locally earned monies into our locally owned properties to expand our operations if warranted, purchase equipment, and hire and train more local people, all allowing us to give back to our community in many more ways than one, all while absorbing any level of risk from the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see Councillor Armstrong has a question.
Thank you. Same question that I asked of the NRE. Do you think there is a possibility there could be a private, public, and nonprofit collaboration?
Absolutely. I think it would be could be a powerful thing in our region for sure. We've talked about it in the past and would be open to pursuing that.
Thank you.
I see no further questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Mr. Erickson, followed by Mr. Thompson and Mr. Graff after that. Come forward, sir, and if you would give us your name and place of residence, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, Arnold Erickson, 4327 Gulfview Drive in Nanaimo. This is the first time I've ever publicly spoken here. I'm passionate about recycling. I'm a taxpayer. I recycle regularly through the curbside, and what doesn't take curbside, I take to the other private sectors for styrofoam and everything else on Hayes Road, and my yard waste out to Biggs Road. So, I use the existing infrastructure that's already here. I believe that it can improve and grow as the needs is required. But most importantly for me right now is that we have a proposal an organization that wants $6 to $10 million and wants us as the taxpayers to secure that and for a number of years to pay out everything, whereas I strongly feel that we already have in the private sector the services in place, and that this money could be spent elsewhere, as has already been mentioned earlier. Obviously homelessness, and there's other issues, or taking that money, if the city feels it has that money to spare, and putting it out to RFPs for other service providers for needs that need to be done, around the city here. So that's just basically it.
Thank you, sir. I see no questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next delegation is Mr. Thompson. Not seeing Mr. Thompson, so we'll move to Mark Graff, is it? If we could have your name and place of residence, please, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Mark Graff. I live at 422 Foster Street in Nanaimo. I've lived here for 25 years. I'm open to change, and I think that's what we're all talking about today is change. I think with change, we need to work together. Having one spot, my fear is that you're going to see more public of dumping and stuff like this, mattresses, couches that we've seen up on the screen, and that's a horrible thing to see. I think the option for us would be to be open to helping and not have to foot the bill of a huge tax dollar to pay for that. And is it going to work? It's a great deal. Disneyland's a great place too. It costs a lot of money to go there. My thing is to work together, to have opportunities to be able to have different spots to recycle our stuff. And I agree, the plastics and all the rest of that need to be refined in a better aspect than what we're doing today. So those are my concerns, and we need to look after this place because, yeah, we're not doing a very good job right now of it. So together, working together, we can do that together, but not just one company. We all need to pull together, put our personalities aside, and do a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I see no questions. Thank you very much. Joe Mays, I believe, is next. I'm not seeing anybody responding. Stacy Abbott.
Hello,
If we could have your name and place of residence, then you have 5 minutes.
Okay, my name's Stacy Abbott. I'm at 1275 Dufferin Crescent.
Thank you.
I've lived in Nanaimo on and off for 22 years. For the last 10 years, I've been here. I've been recycling at all 3 different major facilities, depending on where I've moved to or where I've lived. And I've seen their growth and their change. What NRE is proposing is to open up this giant facility, a one-stop shop, which would be wonderful. But these other facilities have the property and the means to do the same thing, if not close. And if we give them a year or challenge them to come up to the standards where NRE is proposing, maybe in a year with $6 million, they can have this facility if you agree to give them the funds for it. But instead, you could keep your money and challenge the other recycling companies to come up with some more ways to get close to that zero waste that they're suggesting, and perhaps have NRE work with each facility and have their own section at each of their sites taking in the stuff that maybe they're not able to take in at the private exchange systems that are set up. And also, NRG is proposing that part of their facility is take in and use furniture and use clothing and all that and helping the community. Well, what happens to Value Village or Salvation Army or those other things that also take that and are benefiting off that? They also take that. So there's always places to bring recyclables. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no questions, so thank you. Chris Sharp. Sir, if we could have your name and place of residence, and then you have 5 minutes.
My name is Chris Sharp. I live at 2092 Skaha Drive, and I am a city property tax payer, and I do have a concern with money being given to the NRE. Since the NRE started, there was a need at that time, for sure. But since that time, private business has evolved. Other nonprofits such as the Habitat for Humanity, Salvation Army also operates stores for secondhand products. The city of Nanaimo themselves have evolved their garbage collection systems and spent a lot of money trying to also get to the zero waste goal, or as minimal as possible. So other things have evolved and developed over time that were not happening, say, 20 years ago or more. So the need for the city of Nanaimo to take people's tax money and give it for this purpose is just wrong. They got more important things that you should be putting the money towards. And that's just my opinion, and I think it's a lot of people that are in this community that are taxpayers and probably are not here tonight, but feel that way as well. I understand there's a lot of supporters here for the NRE, but there's also a lot of people that may not be here that are taxpayers that don't want to see their money going towards this purpose, would like it to end up somewhere else, right? So that's all that I think that should be considered when the city of Nanaimo is considering such a request. Private business has evolved immensely over the last bit of time, and like I say, and the city of Nanaimo as well has evolved their systems. And I think if they just keep progressing in that direction, ultimately the zero waste will eventually come to realization. So I just want to leave it at that, and that's good.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good.
I see no questions. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks.
I'm going to ask once more if Joe Mays, or I believe I'm saying it properly, Mays, and Clint Thompson are still in the gallery wishing to speak. If not, I'll call for a motion to accept the 7 delegations that we have just heard. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Hong. All in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you. And if I may, I would just like to thank the delegations for taking the time to come here this evening and express your opinion, whether on one side of the argument or not. It's appreciated that people would be involved in our community and in issues like this, so thank you for coming out. Now, Council, we have a chance to ask staff any questions or to move forward with a motion if somebody is ready. I see Councillor Armstrong first.
Thank you. Under the community charter, in reviewing that, it states that we cannot give loans out to businesses. Do we have a legal opinion as to whether we can legally give $6 million or the $400 and some thousand as a grant?
Preliminarily spoken to city council or city solicitor, and there is some things that we would need to consider, and council probably should have a briefing on some of the legal implications and how the community charter would play into a decision to provide grant funding to the NRE.
Follow up, if I may?
Yes.
And is that legal opinion going to be available for council, or is there going to be more work required?
Our discussion with the lawyer, their suggestion is that they would need to do a fuller review and fully brief council. We've just spoken to them briefly and given them an overview of the request and some of the things that we think need to be explored legally, and they would need to do a further in-depth. It's just been very quick conversation with them, and they really should brief council fully on the legal implications and the community charter in regards to this request.
And just one other follow-up, if
Yes.
I may. And on that, is it possible, like obviously because there's the concerns because council would be supporting a nonprofit over private industry, which again, the charter doesn't allow, could the question be asked of the lawyers if there was a partnership between the city, private industry, and a nonprofit, would that be allowable under the charter? If we could address that, please. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Gurry, did you wish to weigh in?
No, thank you, Chair. Ms. Fulla covered it.
All right, thank you. Then Councillor Yocum, you're next.
Sure, and here in the conversation, I'd like to make a motion, if possible.
Yes.
That an in-depth legal review take place on the NRE's request prior to referring requests to staff. This will allow council to be fully informed of the long-term legal and financial obligations. Simple as that.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Brennan seconding. And Ms. Gurry, did you get that motion? We're good?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion moved and seconded. Discussion on that motion. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Nowhere does that motion mention the business plan and reviewing those numbers. So should I make that as a second motion, or?
It said legal and financial.
Hopefully it's going to be an in-depth financial one as well. Like I wasn't sure from staff's point of view.
Ms. Fulla?
Staff would suggest that council first get a legal briefing on the implications of the request, and then council can move forward from there and direct staff, if they so wish, to follow up on the request and do a review of the business case for you and provide you with options.
So legal first.
Yeah, that would be our recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've reviewed the plan that I received on Friday from the NRE. I've also reviewed the one that I had from the regional district. Very similar plans. I believe this should have a financial review in it too. Someone like Myers Norris Penny that did the review out at the RDN could quite possibly be charged with reviewing this document, seeing how they reviewed the first one, and it could give council a good indication. I haven't seen much more on this review from the last proposal, more so a bit of revenue that Councillor Hong tried to ask, but was told it wasn't quite appropriate to ask that at this meeting. So I'd like to see a financial review, Myers Norris Penny, KPMG, and a registered accounting firm to review the business plan. So I think it should be included. When you say a financial review, it should be a financial review by an auditor, an actuary, or someone like that. So I understand what staff says. They'll get the legal opinion first, and then if we proceed from there, we would get. But I'd like to get this expedited so it's not sitting for too long. And summer's coming, things like that. Stuff slows down. So I would like to know if we could start a form of, with this motion, would there be a financial review included?
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Actually, it's not with regard to the motion, so I'll talk about it after we make, because I do have a question for staff still. Thank you.
All right, I see no other speakers to the motion. So my understanding of the motion is that the next step, if this was passed, would be to refer the report to legal for advice. And depending on what that advice turned out to be, it would come back to staff, and there could be, if appropriate, further investigations regarding financials. All right, so no other speakers. I will call the question on that motion then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Council.
What happened? You want to explain to them what happened? Do you know what's going on now?
Thank you, Councillor Kipp. So I hope the gallery is still awake out there. So the motion is to refer this for legal advice on the implications and ramifications if the city chose to pursue this. And when that comes back, hopefully in a timely fashion, then we will look at the finances, if that's deemed appropriate, and see where it goes. So it will first of all depend on legal advice. Councillor Hong, did you have something else you wished?
It was just a question to staff, but I'm rethinking I might have to ask this at the RDN staff, because I want to know what the impact of having the NRE closed is right now on our landfill. but I'm sure you probably won't know that. So
I think that's probably
Yeah.
more appropriate
Thank
at
you.
the RDN level. Thank you. All right, thank you, Council. So we're going to move on, and the next item on the agenda is Mayor's Report. And I will try to make it brief, but actually I do have 3 announcements to make. I'll give 1 minute for those who wish to vacate. But you're welcome to stay because there's lots more fun still to be had.
No, this is the fun stuff. I'm gonna go recycle something. Go empty some beer bottles, recycle some beer bottles.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to get moving along, and I do have 3 items under the Mayor's Report. The first one is I'm passing along an announcement from the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, and that is to remind everybody about the start of the night market, celebrating the best of Nanaimo's downtown street scene. The Chamber of Commerce is turning Commercial Street into a pedestrian mall every Thursday evening this summer for 11 weeks, starting this Thursday from 5 till 7. The inaugural Commercial Street Night Market kicks off this week, and more information is available at www.nanaimonite.market. Secondly, I'm very pleased to announce and delighted to advise you that the City of Nanaimo's Sort, Toss, Roll program has been recognized in 2 categories by the Solid Waste Association of North America in their 2018 Excellence Awards. From the press release issued by SWANA, quote, award winners represent the most innovative and dynamic organizations throughout North America as judged by their peers, and SWANA is proud to recognize their accomplishments, end quote. Nanaimo joins a number of high-profile North American cities in receiving recognition. Nanaimo was awarded silver in communication, education, and marketing excellence in 2 categories: awareness campaign recognizing excellence in the creation and implementation of the education program to inform audiences of a project or program, and communication, education, and marketing tools recognizing excellence in creativity of individual unique printed and digital resources to promote a program. So I would like to gratefully acknowledge the leadership, the teamwork, and the excellence demonstrated by Charlotte Davis, Tracy Lowen, Bill Sims, Tammy Tour, and Derek Johnson in bringing this honor to Nanaimo. Well done. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, and perhaps most seriously, as we've heard earlier this evening, the City of Nanaimo recognizes that we have an issue with homelessness, and we recognize that there is a need for increased social housing. I want to make that clear. But having said that, I want to make the following statement regarding the tent city. This statement has been authorized for me to read by council unanimously, and it reads as follows. The City of Nanaimo does not support the continuation of the tent city at One Port Place. We are attempting to address the concerns of downtown residents and business owners. The city is currently seeking to secure alternate shelter options. The city is taking a prudent and balanced approach to address the public concerns on the tent city. The city urges any members of the public who have been negatively impacted by the tent city and who wish to make a sworn statement to email our solicitors at office@govlaw.ca. Counsel for the City of Nanaimo, Mr. Troy D'Souza, has advised that it is the city's intent to proceed to court during the last week of June 2018. Mr. D'Souza has stated, quote, the public will best be served by bringing this matter before a justice of the Supreme Court of British Columbia to resolve the competing concerns, end quote. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to administration, we're at item 8A in our agenda. Committee recommendations, and this one comes from the Parks, Recreation, and Wellness Committee. It is involving a pilot park site for model heirs, and there is a committee recommendation. It's on page 4 of your agenda, Council. If somebody is prepared to move that recommendation for council. Councillor Hong making the motion for A and B. Seconder. seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We have advisory committee minutes and a number of them, 5 sets of them. I can take them all together if somebody is comfortable making that motion. Councillor Hong, seconded Councillor Yoakum. Discussion on any of those? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 8C, amendments to General Election Bylaw 2011, number 7129. Ms. Gurry, you're going to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report and bylaw is to introduce and give 3 readings to an amendment to the General Election Bylaw 2011, number 7129. So the purpose of the amendment came about because the bylaw hasn't been amended since just after the last election, and we still had to update the dates. As well, the Local Government Act made several changes to their sections that we reference in our bylaw, and those needed to be updated to match the now current sections in the Local Government Act. So when staff prepare to do an amendment bylaw, we take a look at best practices and any other improvements that we could possibly make. A couple other municipalities, they provide for a $100 deposit for nominations for mayor and councillors, as well as anywhere between 2 nominators, which is the minimum requirement in the Local Government Act, to if you have over 5,000 residents, you can have between 10 or 25 nominators to become a candidate. So we are suggesting and recommending that we add the $100 deposit nomination fee that is refundable once you have filed your financial disclosures documents with Elections BC. So we are recommending that $100 for nominations for mayor and council, as well as move from 2 nominators to 10 nominators.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Councillor Hong, you had a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. Question to you to staff, Ms. Gurry. How is that $100 deposit for the signs going? Is that working, or is that costing the city money to remove signs?
So through you, Chair, to Councillor Hong, it's a $200 deposit, and it seems to be working fine. We get everybody gets their deposit back. We haven't had anybody not receive their deposit back, at least this last year with the by-election and the referendum. So there was no issues with people taking down their signs in the 30 days allotted after the election.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to move the motion. Do I need to do the motions individually?
Yes, we do.
Yes, I will. Recommend that the General Election Amendment Bylaw 2018, number 7129.03, to amend the bylaw to add a nomination deposit and increase the number of qualified nominees, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hong. Thank you. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I motion that the General Election Amendment Bylaw 2018, number 7129.03, pass second reading.
Any discussion at this point, Council? Councillor Hong, yes? Second. Oh, second, thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And that the General Election Amendment Bylaw 2018, number 7129.03, pass third reading.
Seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Into public services, item 10 on our agenda, the Georgia Greenway Phase 1 update, to be introduced by Mr. Rosen, Senior Manager of Engineering. And here he is.
With his posse.
Mr. Rosen.
Thank you, Chair. So this project, the Georgia Greenway project, is a council strategic priority project that Council has seen several times recently. The most recent item with Council was, I believe, at the March 26th Council meeting, and there was a motion from Council regarding some concern over the bridge alignment and some trees that were impacted. So the referral was back to staff to review the potential mitigation to impacts to the trees and so on. So we've done that. We've done some additional public consultation. We've done some detailed physical analysis on the tree's condition, and we have an update for Council at this time. And One thing that I should point out is there was some concern, staff pointed out some concern about delay for the project at the last time we talked to council. So the concern is around the bird nesting window. So at that point, we were before the bird nesting window, and if a bird nest had appeared in the trees, we wouldn't be able to cut them down. So just recently, we've gone and had a look at the trees. There is currently no bird nest in the trees right now, so we still have an opportunity to proceed if council wishes to do that. We have a short presentation by the project manager, Curtis Noble, to my left here, to provide a bit more detailed update to council. So I would suggest I hand it over to Curtis to give you a short presentation.
Certainly, we'll hear the presentation, and then we do have a couple of delegations, and we'll do the presentation first. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of Council. As Paul mentioned, my name is Curtis Noble, and I'm the project manager in the Georgia Greenway project. I'm here to just give you a very brief overview of some of the work that we've completed recently. And I thought I'd start with just a very brief overview of the project. The Georgia Greenway is a planned 3.1 kilometer active transportation route through the Harewood neighborhood. Phase 1, as you can see on the map here, is about 500 meters, half a kilometer, that will connect Georgia Avenue between 6th Street and 7th Street. Phase 1 includes a 4-meter wide asphalt multi-use trail, multimodal bridge over the Chase River, new LED lighting, and intersection crossing improvements at both intersections. The Georgia Greenway is supported by several planning documents. It's also supported by the strategic plan update. Engineering designs were completed by our consultant between early March 2017 to 2018. This included a public consultation process in May of 2017. The project was originally tendered in March of this year, at which time we were also starting with some of the tree removal work to get ahead of the bird nest window. And at that time, council heard some concerns from residents over the planned tree removal and the width of the bridge. So at that March 26th special meeting, council heard from some of the local residents some of their concerns. And at that time, council passed a motion to refer the siting of the bridge in the Georgia Greenway project to staff for further discussions regarding tree retention. So since that time and since that direction, we've placed the project on hold. We've reviewed the bridge design, we've reviewed the trees, and we've also completed some additional public consultation. In terms of the bridge design, our current bridge is now sitting at 4 meters wide from railing to railing, which is just over 13 feet. This design width matches the proposed multi-use path on both sides of the bridge, and the multi-use pathway width also complies with our City of Nanaimo bicycle facility design guidelines. The figure here shown is directly from those guidelines, and it states that the recommended minimum width for multi-use pathways is 4 meters. And this width is to facilitate two-way travel of pedestrians, cyclists, inline skaters, persons in wheelchairs, and other non-motorized users. And also on bridge width, the Harewood Neighborhood Plan also calls for the development of the Georgia Greenway and the bridge in several locations, and it gets quite specific in certain areas. And this is just one quote directly from the plan. Quote, as part of the Georgia Avenue Bikeway, create a new 4-meter wide multi-use pathway across Harewood Centennial Park with a new multimodal bridge over the Chase River. This quote really could serve as the mission statement for the project, and our current design strives to meet the goals and objectives that were set forth in this neighborhood plan. Like I said, we also had a review of the trees. The current design project calls for the removal of several trees and also calls for the replanting of several more trees. So at the end of the project, there will be a net gain of trees more than what there is today. Most of the trees are smaller, but there is three trees worth mentioning. One is a significant big leaf maple, and there's also 2 landmark cottonwood trees. The big leaf maple tree was reviewed extensively during the engineering design, as well again more recently, and it was concluded that it needed to be removed regardless of the bridge alignment and width, just so that large construction equipment could get in there and physically construct the bridge. In terms of the landmark cottonwood trees, these trees were also reviewed extensively as part of the engineering design. But because of the number of concerns that sort of poured in March, We wanted to reach out to an independent professional that would that wasn't involved with the project before, and just give us sort of an unbiased assessment of those trees. So we reached out to Dr. Julian Dunster of Dunster & Associates in Victoria. He came up and did some specialized testing and completed a detailed risk assessment of those trees for us. His findings included that there's currently decay within the trunks of both the trees, that those trees pose high risk to the greenway users and the bridge structure itself if the trees remain after a bridge is installed. And the likelihood of failure could be as little as 2 years if the bridge is constructed and the trees remain. The images you see here are directly from Dunster & Associates' report, and it just sort of represents the scans that he completed. The green color sort of represents dense, healthy wood, and the brighter colors represent sort of varying levels of decay within the trunk. We also completed some public consultation. We went back to the same event that we participated in last year, which is the Active for Life Expo. This is a health and active participation event that's hosted right at Harewood Centennial Park. We went out to provide information on the project and gather feedback, listen to what the public had to say, specifically in regards to the bridge details and the number of trees that need to be removed for the project. We also included a public survey, which we did in 2017. This year we had 215 respondents, which ended up being more than last year, which was good news. And those survey results indicated that 3/4 of the public support the project, support the Harewood Neighborhood Plan's initiatives, and support the tree removals that's necessary for this bridge to be installed. So what we're recommending to council is that they provide staff with direction to proceed with the construction in 2018 as the project is currently designed. We're basing this recommendation that because it meets the objectives of the neighborhood plan, it creates a safe space for users of all ages and abilities, and what we found out through the public consultation, that it is supported by the majority of the public.
Thank you very much. So we do have 2 delegations. Before I call those forward, Council, do you have any questions specifically for staff at this point? Seeing Councillor Hong, yes.
Thank you. With regards to the public consultation and when you went and asked them the question, did you ask them if they wanted a smaller bridge, or did you not ask that question?
What we identified is what the goals and objectives in the Harewood Neighborhood Plan stated, and sort of explained this is why we chose the width of the bridge. And what we really were asking is if they support what the Harewood Neighborhood Plan was sort of mandating that we do. And we also sort of provided the opportunity that if they wanted to see a facility that was to a lesser standard, i.e. like a pedestrian-only feature where cyclists would have to dismount and cross, well, then they could certainly share that feedback with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move to our delegations. Ms. Gurry, am I correct that the original delegation still gets 10 minutes and then the late delegation gets 5 minutes? Thank you. So we'll start with Mr. Greg Sorensen. Sir, if you could give us your name and place of residence, you have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Councillor and Chairman, and my fellow guys we talk to all the time. Just going to read you something here quickly that we put together. We have concerns regarding the Georgia Greenway project, as a smaller bridge was not considered in the planning process. We participated in the public survey that was provided by city staff members, but found that the questions asked did not consider the width of the bridge. After discussing with city staff members at the open house, we were informed that the bridge was required to be 14 meters, roughly 13 feet. And in the neighborhood plan, it is specified the bridge being multi-purpose, and a multi-purpose bridge, as specified in the bylaws, is 4 meters, 13 feet wide. This we understand. We are asking that the neighborhood plan be amended, as this is something that can be done, so that it include a narrower bridge and it still be adequate enough for various modes of transportation. including cycling, skateboarding, believe electric scooters, and pedestrians, parents with children in, those strollers. Yeah, thank you. It's been a while since I pushed one of those. According to the City of Vancouver Transportation Design Guidelines, bridges with the widths of 4.5 meters, 15 feet in a bidirectional, or 3.0 meters, 10 feet unidirectional, are recommended where two-way bike volumes are expected to be greater than 7,500 bikes a day. There's obviously no demand for here that at this point in time. Now, being an avid cyclist, I would love to see 7,500 bikes a day. It's probably not going to happen at the moment. On top of that, we were talked earlier about moving trees. So we also have read the tree report. We went down. I've talked with Curtis about it. I completely understand it. I've seen the pictures. We also had a gentleman come down who was the head forester for BC Hydro, and he observed, and he actually read the report as well and confirmed your findings. He did feel that from what was there, that the maple itself should still stay, and that the size of the bridge would definitely have quite a big impact on the environment. So the idea after the March 26th meeting, which we had here and I spoke at, was that the city was to come up with a new option as requested by us and by yourselves to be presented and not just continue on with the original plan. At this point in time, we haven't seen anything that's different. Everything seems to be exactly the same. The recent survey questions that were sent out to the public to comment on and we found were misleading and evasive, and were areas that the only option for a yes or no, as opposed to a proper response, could not be found. We feel that at this point in time, that if this project were to go through, it would look more like a road than it would a trail, and the green in the greenway would disappear. Finally, in finishing, as mentioned above, we came to you on March 26th of this year with our concerns. You listened, and you made the right choice. We believe that most of you have taken the time to visit the site and understand why we are concerned. Your visit has also enforced us the fact that you made the right choice then, and we hope you'll make the right choice again. All we're looking for is not to stop the project. What we want is that be amended and that a smaller bridge and more respect for the environment be included in your decision-making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much. And our other delegation was Mr. McGrath. If you would come forward and give us your name and place of residence, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tim McGrath. I'm a resident of Nanaimo. I would like to ask staff before I start my presentation whether they received the letter from the Harewood Neighborhood Association supporting the program. Now, this is the neighborhood association that represents everybody in Harewood. I'm not exactly sure who Mr. Sorensen is representing. He kept using the word we. The concern here, and my purpose of being here today, is to consider or ask council to consider the safety issues. The 4-meter width as recommended in the plan and what the neighborhood has been working towards on the neighborhood plan for the last 7 years, thereabouts, it was quite clear as to what we were going to receive. And the city has done an excellent job at presenting that. The 4-meter size is the recommended size by the city. It is also what the new Johnson Street Bridge multimodal trail is. It's the same size, and it's to encourage greater use. That's what it's used for, and that's what it is. If the city were to consider reducing the width of the bridge, you're creating a safety problem. What you're doing is you're going to have people in wheelchairs, grandmas with their walkers, walking their little dog beside the walker, possibly a child. You're going to have, in that particular area, being beside Barsby, there's lots of children who will be using that trail to get to and from school because they don't want to drive on Bruce Street. They don't want to ride on Howard Street. So they'll be able to use the trail. And we all know, and the pictures right from your own brochures show a group of 3 children approximately a foot apart. And that's going to take up a little bit more space because of the children, because they don't ride in single file. Now, coming down the opposite direction is going to be Mr. Sorensen, an avid cyclist, barreling down there at upwards of 35 kilometers an hour. It's a straight stretch. They're going to bicycle as fast as they can through that straight stretch. And if you reduce the size of the bridge, that's like setting up the children and the seniors as bowling pins in an alley. That's what's going to happen. Somebody's going to get hurt. I think it was a guy by the name of Russell Peters that said that line. Somebody's going to get hurt. And this is something that we have to be concerned about. The city has a standard. The standard has to be followed. It's that simple. Harewood neighborhood has a plan. It has to be followed. We've had to follow it in every other instance when we stand up and comment on how a building is supposed to be done, and they come back and they say, well, this is what the plan says. This is what the plan says. And if we start varying it now, just to go across the bridge is ridiculous. When you get on the other side on Georgia, it's going to be 4 meters. When you get down to 7th Street, it's going to be 4 meters. To reduce it is all we have to do is look at the congestion that occurs down on the Malahat when they have 4 lanes going into 2. And how many accidents has that created? To change it is absurd, plain and simple. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see no questions. Thank you very much. So, council, if there are any further questions to staff, otherwise we do have a recommendation. I'll be looking for a motion to proceed. Councillor Yoakum.
Yeah, quick question. Thank you, everyone. It's probably a silly question, but down there, I know this is about 13 feet around, 4 meters, I believe. Hold on, I must be tired. The bridge down, I guess, excessive usage down there by Mafeo Sutton. What's that bridge?
Lions Gate Bridge.
It's about down by the Tally Ho there.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but I think that bridge is probably between 3 and 4 meters wide.
So my question is, and this is not a reflection or judgment or anything, I just want to, is will we be obligated now to change all the other stuff for this standard? Because that's, like, this is great, don't get me wrong, this project's awesome, but will the, now, a high usage, this is not saying this is going to have high usage, but we all know the high usage down there already.
Mm-hmm.
Will we be obligated to make that 13 feet, 1 inch?
As part of,
Because it's part of the bicycle lane as well.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the first new facilities of this nature that we're constructing. So any new facility would certainly be following our guidelines that we have in place.
So this will be the new norm.
Yes.
So just to expand on that, if the Lions Gate Bridge were to be reconstructed at this point, it would be constructed to the new standard. So in fact, that one, because of the traffic, it may even be more than 4 meters potentially. One thing I'd like to point out here is bridges like this last a long time. Typically, from an asset management standpoint, we look at 75 to 80 years for a bridge like this. So keep in mind when you're making your decision that this is going to be there for a long time.
And I'm not, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll be quick here. I know everyone's tired. But hypothetically, like, everyone goes down there and thinking some kid gets smoked and they say, well, why wasn't it wide enough like up in Harewood? I'm just thinking about liability issues and that. So I know I'm down there with my kids and sometimes it gets pretty tight. But anyways, just food for thought. And I'm just want to make sure we're being, and that's probably not the only example around this beautiful city. But anyways, I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Are you ready for a motion?
I am ready for a motion if there's no further questions to staff, yes.
Okay. Then I will move that council direct staff to proceed with the construction of Georgia Greenway Phase 1 project in 2018 as currently designed. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to that.
Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Brennan, you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that there was extensive public engagement for the neighborhood plan, and then we went back, or our staff went back, and engaged with the public again, and the results of that were that the majority of input supports the project and views it as an overall community benefit that would create safer space for pedestrians and cyclists, encourage active transportation, and improve accessibility connectivity for the neighborhood. So it's for that reason that I support this. We went to the community, we found out what they wanted. We got another opinion when we started to get ready to do the work. We went back to the community, and the community reconfirmed that this is what they want. So that's enough for me, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, and I will support the staff recommendation. At first I didn't, because of what we thought were significant trees, but after doing the research and finding them that there was decay in them, that they would have to come down eventually anyways, so that kind of eased my mind, because that was one of my main concerns, was that, and like I said, this was a council priority. So if the community plan states that they've had years to work on how wide that this is going to be, they know that, and we went back, we gave them a second chance to verify the first time, to make sure that we felt comfortable moving forward, and staff have done that. So I don't want to delay this project any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other speakers to the motion. It has been moved and seconded, so I will call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Yoakum opposed. The motion passes. Thank you. Next up, item 10B. Hospital Area Parking Strategy Report, and Mr. Rosen, Senior Manager of Engineering, you're taking the lead on this.
Thank you, Chair. Parking in the hospital area, it's currently more or less unregulated. There's ongoing concern in the neighborhood over the parking issue around that area. So in parallel with the hospital area neighborhood plan, a parking strategy was developed. That strategy includes 2 phases and generally consists of time of day restrictions, resident exempt zones, and pay parking. We included some public consultation in that process, and the hospital area neighborhood association representatives have indicated support for the strategy as it's outlined. At this time, the recommendation is for council to receive the report for information. Staff are intending to prepare a business case for future consideration as part of a future financial planning process, outlining the benefits and the costs and so on of implementing phase 1 of the parking. And so we have the project manager, Amir Freund, and Jamie Rose, the manager of transportation, here to answer any questions that council may have on the matter.
Thank you. So we do have one delegation to speak to this topic. I'll ask council if they have any questions at this point of staff, bearing in mind that we are receiving this for information only tonight. Council, any questions? Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Through you to staff, I liked the plan, and I liked how you were going to change the actual hospital area around the hospital into a more walking, pedestrian-friendly area. But that seemed to have gotten missed in the communication to actually staff at the hospital and the design team that were designing it, because one of the items that we talked about on the design advisory panel was their new power generation plant, and when they presented to us, they didn't know that we were working on this hospital plan, as it had just come out, and I think we only seen it a week before. So the designs that are going to be happening and all these additions and renovations that are going to be happening at the hospital, are we now going to be implementing this plan into their rework of the hospital?
Yeah, we're not that familiar with what the hospital is planning to do in terms of their on-site work. But we can certainly coordinate with them and make sure whatever they're planning to do sort of meshes with our parking strategy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and again, it wasn't strictly about the parking strategy, but as you know, the hospital area plan as a whole was what I was talking about, right? I think when you presented that plan to us, it was more about walkability around the actual hospital area where patients had more room to walk. And you were going to narrow those roads down, I think, if I wasn't mistaken.
Okay, so if I may, Councillor Hong, the hospital area plan is next on our agenda, but this is just specifically to the parking plan.
Yeah, and I think that, well, this kind of ties in the same thing for narrowing it for parking. That was kind of what I was going to get at.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Just under the urban design framework, we're talking about the transportation, transit, and cycling networks. Has there been consultation with BC Ambulance Service, who use those roads on a regular basis, who already have concerns?
Through the chair, ambulance was not directly consulted with the bike lanes that were put in place. It's not something we typically do for that type of road modification. But moving forward, we will ensure that all parties are engaged.
It's just a concern that was raised by the ambulance to me, that they had some concerns about some of the designs of the roadways because it impacted their ability to go code 3 at speed. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions at this point, so we'll move to the delegation. Mr. Goldsack, please come forward. If you would give us your name and place of residence, you have 10 minutes.
Jim Goldsack. I live on Dufferin Crescent. And I stand before you today and thank you for allowing me to speak today in regards to the hospital area plan and the parking strategy. I'd like to thank the council, mayor and council, for commissioning this project and directing city staff to complete this project. And I also want to thank Brian Zurich, in particular Brian Zurich, because he was a contact person for the Hospital Area Association and for the interested parties. I would like to also acknowledge that the staff of the community planning did a very good job. I can tell you that the community at large and our neighborhood organization had many questions, and at times real hard questions in regards to the parking. I'm going to go off a little bit, but in regards to the parking, that was the major issue we had. Walkability, the safety issues in the neighborhood. And we felt at the very end that we were heard. We felt very comfortable. Yeah, there's probably going to be some issues, but we're going to have to work with them. The proposed plan and the parking strategy will place the hospital area on the city map. And I'm going to maybe expand on that, because when we were doing the bylaw, when you were doing the bylaw amendment for parking and the variances that came up, we had some issues with that. But I think this plan addresses some of this. One of the issues that we came up when we were doing the online survey in our community, and the question that came before me as the president of the association, what's wrong? There's no hospital area. We're either in Northfield or wherever. I said, because we're not on the map. This will put us on the map. This plan will put us on the map. And it will also fit in with the official community plan as well. We're not acknowledged in there. So now a hospital area will be acknowledged. Our neighborhood has seen much growth, and with this plan going forward, we envision a community that will grow, and with the vision we can be proud of. It's a living plan, so we can see that there's going to be changes as we go through. But I have the confidence that the city staff will help our neighborhood in that growth and what have you. So I ask that you support this report and go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions to the delegation? I'll just say I want to express my thanks to you, Mr. Goldsack, not only for your community involvement, but for your words tonight. Our staff does an excellent job, and often they do not get recognized for it, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I have a motion to receive the delegation, please?
I wanted to say something.
I'm sorry?
My name's
Oh, sorry, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Goldsack too, because he is here with regularity, watching what's going on at council, and I know that he's experienced some tough issues, and I just really appreciate that you've come out tonight to thank our staff and expressed your appreciation for putting the hospital area on the map and recognizing that it is a neighborhood and needs to be recognized. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the staff too, because you
So,
great job.
sorry. So a motion, first of all, to receive the delegation. Councillor Hong making the motion.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We do have a staff recommendation to receive the report for information. Councillor Hong is making the motion. Councillor Armstrong seconding. Any discussion? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So that moves us to a related topic, which is item C, the hospital area plan in general. And Mr. Lindsay is moving into the hot seat. Hopefully not too hot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think council will recall, I believe it was the first part of May, we were in front of you introducing the plan, and at that night you received a presentation from Brian Zurich. And as you heard earlier this evening, Mr. Zurich was the project lead on this planning work, and he gave you an overview of the plan on that evening. We're here tonight to simply take the first step in introducing a bylaw amendment, which if adopted will ultimately incorporate the hospital plan as part of the official community plan. So our recommendation this evening is simply to proceed with first and second reading, and of course if that passes it will proceed to the next available public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I don't know if you caught what I said earlier, Dale, but I guess I addressed it to the wrong person. So I'll address it to you with regards to, you know, what's happening at the hospital and some of the design and the buildings that they have. That it was a great presentation in May from Brian with regards to urban design and street character and open spaces and more pedestrian connectivity. Is that going to follow through with the actual hospital itself?
Yes, certainly as the neighborhood plans are adopted and they bring with them often specific policies around development, as sites redevelop or develop, they take those into account. So what I would say in addition is that the hospital was a key partner, a key member at the table during this process, so they were involved through the neighborhood plan. But absolutely, we'll be looking to them to implement the general, especially the general design policies, which I think is what you're referring to as part of their future development.
Great, thank you. Like I said, it was just by chance that they were at Design Advisory, and their building that they're doing for the power plant is actually a phenomenal looking building for that area, and I'm really impressed with it, and that's why I asked the question if they knew that this plan was coming forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
And just again, if you could consult with BC Ambulance Service, who's, you know, that road is their main road into the hospital. And again, because when you narrow those roads, it can be really dangerous trying to navigate. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions, so we have staff recommendation regarding the bylaws.
Move the motion. Move the hospital area parking, it's the strategic report. Sorry. I'm on one behind. The motion that the official community plan amendment bylaw?
Yes.
2018, number 6500.039, to include the hospital area plan as an amendment to the official plan, pass first reading.
Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And that official community plan amendment bylaw 2018, number 6500.039, pass second reading.
Seconder, Councillor Brennan seconding. Any discussion? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. On to item D, rezoning application number RA 392, 580 St. Andrews Street. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is to rezone the subject property in order to allow for a two-lot subdivision. It's worth noting that the subject property is 960 square meters, which is just under the 1,000 square meters that would be required to do the subdivision under the existing zoning. But because they are short that 40 square meters, they're required to rezone to our small lot zone. The small lot zone allows for a minimum lot area of 325, but in this case, there will be two lots, and one will be 541, the second will be 419, so well above the minimum that's required for the small lot zone. It's also, as outlined in the report, there's no associated variances to lot width or depth.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Any questions of staff on this? Councillor Hong?
Thank you. Just a question to Mr. Lindsay with regards to the community contribution. Is this the $1,000 per door thing that we talk about?
That is correct, sir. Through the chair to Councillor Hong, that is correct. So in this case, there's one additional lot that's being created. So the applicants are proposing a $1,000 contribution towards the neighborhood park.
Thank you. Because I'm starting to have issues with regards to what we need for affordable housing and what we've discussed and what we're hearing from everybody else before us tonight. I think we need more money towards affordable housing, and I think we need to figure out how to get this money into reserve so we can actually do more of those kind of projects. I understand that it's great for improvements in the park, but I would like to see a bigger pool of money so we can actually do more affordable housing. And that's one of the concerns I have. It seems like I don't think our reserves are going to be big enough from what our community expects us to do. So I really would like to relook at this, and I'm hoping that that affordable housing strategy does look at this number. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Just wondering if there's sufficient room for parking.
Mr. Chairman, in staff's opinion, yes, although there's not detailed design of the house, the lots, as I mentioned, are well above the minimum lot area under the zone, and in our opinion, could accommodate the required parking.
Thank you.
Seeing no other
I
questions.
move the zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 4500.123 to rezone the subject property at 580 St. Andrews Street from single dwelling residential R1 to single dwelling residential small lot R2. Pass first reading.
Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And that zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 4500.123 pass second reading.
Seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion at this point? Call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item E, rezoning application number RA 393, 101 and 105 Lindley Road. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application to amend the zoning boundaries of the subject property to reflect moving the historic zoning boundaries to reflect new proposed subdivision boundaries. The lands are currently in the process of subdivision, and this would bring the zoning into compliance and ensure that there are no split zone properties in the development.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Any questions?
I move the motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 4500.122 to rezone portions of the subject property at 101 and 105 Lindley Road from steep slope residential R10 to single dwelling residential R1 pass first reading.
Seconded by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And that zoning amendment bylaw 2018 number 4500.122 pass second reading.
Seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Any discussion at this point? Call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item F, liquor license application number LA 131 for 100 Port Drive.
Chair, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest because I actually have a liquor license.
Thank you, Councillor Hong.
1 Port Drive? 100
Could you get us one? A beer, cold one?
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, this is for 100 Port Drive. This is the Port Authority property, and it's an application from Helijet to allow for a liquor license for their clients. As outlined, it's just simply a report for information this evening. After this step, we'll proceed with notification to the community and bring back a final report to council for your consideration prior to making a recommendation to the province.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Yoakum is moving the staff recommendation to receive for information.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Any discussion? Call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Welcome back, Councillor Hong. Moving to agenda item number 11 under public safety. 924 Old Victoria Road, unsightly property. This to be introduced by Karen Fry, Fire Chief and Director of Public Safety. Chief Fry.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
So this is an information report for council in relation to a bylaw enforcement for the property maintenance and standards bylaw for an unsightly property. In April, a complaint, I think we have it up here, contacted the city to report the unsightly conditions. It was a large amount of garbage left by the gates. The file was opened and assigned to bylaws. They found it to be in an offense, and as such, contacted the owner through a letter to the registered owner of the property. In the third paragraph on discussion, it actually was to be removed by May 28th, 2018. Letter was received back from the property owner asking for council's consideration to the property. We do have a couple of photos here of current pictures that were taken today, and I drove by the site in between our council meetings today as well to verify it is still located on this property. And that is it. So it's basically, I believe council is looking to, I'm not sure if there's a delegation here, to speak and ask for council's reconsideration on the cleanup. We have not yet cleaned up the property, as it is the property owner's right or ability to ask council to reconsider the order to have it cleaned up.
Thank you, Chief Fry. So I will call in a moment for the delegation if they are here. My understanding is that the recommendation is simply to receive this report.
That is correct, to receive the report.
All right, thank you. So we do have a delegation, and I see him coming forward. Philip Gordon, if you could give us your name and place of residence, please.
Gordon Phillips, Abbotsford.
Sorry, Gordon Phillips. And you have 10 minutes, sir.
I beg your pardon?
You have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
I can go ahead with the presentation?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of council, and I'm going to make this as brief as possible, so I'll probably cut down my report some if it's okay. This property, when it was previously dumped on, it was an occasion where trucks drove right onto the property, dropped mattresses and the nature of that. My company bore all cleanup costs and necessary costs to place boulders, circumventing all these approachable entry areas, together with a gate. When, in this instance, the illegal dumpers are chucking bags of garbage, and I took several pictures today too, that a lot of this garbage could not even be, it's outside of the gate. It also, when you look down the line of the potential A Street, if a survey were done, where the road has already been partially constructed, is that the alignment, and I don't want to get too technical, but I won't get beyond that. I really am here to ask council for assistance, I think, by educating what we were hearing a lot about this evening pertaining to garbage, is by posting along the lines of Old Victoria Road, on the shoulder of the road, bylaw signs saying that dumping of garbage is, and today, I'm a lawyer in my past, I looked it up on the computer, it's highly illegal, tantamount to being criminal in many cases. I know how much I pay attention to the city signs that say no parking, don't do this, don't do that. We've posted several no trespassing signs. They're just hardly worth, from the private owner, they're not worth too much. But I think city sign posted along those vulnerable sites that are sort of isolated would do a great deal to not only educating these would-be dumpers, but I think also, because there is so much illegal dumping of garbage today, is that maybe ultimately the police might have to get involved with this. When I was out there taking pictures today, I took a picture of just about 100 feet north on the adjoining site. There's a coach sitting there. Apparently it's been there for quite a while also, because there are quite a few people coming and going from what I witnessed today, and a lot of, I won't get into it, but I would like to go and take a rake and clean that stuff up, or else, but I have to be careful, because if we just clean it up, pay to clean it up, get a contractor in there, and it's repeated, then we have to look, I think, seriously at the motivation. I'm 81 years old now. They sort of might think 25, 30 years, you should be selling that property. But we don't want to sell a property. We're not flippers. We like to contribute. So, therefore, I think if we could start out by posting some signs, I think they could be effective, and it'd be a learning process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions directed to the delegation? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Due to the delegation, you don't want to sell the property, but what are you going to do with it?
The property?
Yes.
It's been a while in coming. That area could possibly be starting to do something now. So we have approached the planners in Nanaimo over the years, and the thing is, I talked to the planner again, another planner today, is that we would like to do something with the property, but it has to make sense. And the big possible problem with light industry, it doesn't give you very much identification. And on the other hand, the contributions are half the construction cost of 8th Street, plus about 800 feet of reconstruction of half of Old Victoria Road. So maybe with this dire need for
Affordable housing.
low-cost housing and housing being built around that area now with some of the new proposals, is that maybe we could be talking to you people and to the planners about something along those lines. But we have to consider that today I paid the tax bill $10,300. It went up $1,000 over the last year. I'm not complaining, I paid it. I've done this for 25, 30 years. I think I've had it about 28 years or something. I like to contribute, but on the other hand, this just driving along, and you wonder why somebody, this has been mentioned here this evening, would drive that distance if they didn't want to go to the dump or whatever. But if it is a motivational thing, I think that's bad.
Thank you, sir.
Nobody should force you to sell your property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion to receive the delegation. So moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconding Councillor Kipp. Thank you. All in favor, opposed, carried.
Motion to receive the report titled 924 Victoria Road dated 2018, June 11th for information.
Moved by Councillor Kipp. Seconder. Seconding is Councillor Brennan. I'll call the question. All in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you very much. Item 12, bylaws with no accompanying report.
I'd like to move the highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2018 number 7263 to provide for highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of Emil Road adjacent to 5901 Hammond Bay Road be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. I'll call the question. All in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you very much. I believe that takes us straight down to question period, unless there's anything I'm not aware of, Ms. Gurry. No questions?
There's no questions on the sign-up sheet, no.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you very much, everybody.